Chapter 1185. Jean Tai, who had been summoned, felt apprehensive. He did not know why the demon lord had summoned him, but he did not dare delay and rushed over as fast as he could. Demon Lord Three Knights stared at Jean Tai and said indifferently, "Back when my devil path dominated the three realms, I had never heard of the Divine Ruin Realm. Tell me in detail what this Divine Ruin Realm is." "Yes." Jean Tai bowed and glanced at the people present. He was a little curious in his heart, but he still answered honestly. Although the Divine Ruin Realm and the Netherworld Divine Palace are located in the Immortal Realm and the Netherworld respectively, they are actually similar. It's just that the Netherworld Divine Palace was created by the Coiling Dragon God, while the Divine Ruin Realm was created by the Phoenix God. There are all kinds of fierce beasts in the Divine Ruins Realm, and their cultivations are all different. The one with the highest cultivation is a rainbow-feathered lion king with a cultivation similar to mine, and he is the current lord of the Divine Ruins Realm. When I fought with him back then, he was slightly weaker than me, but I was also unable to kill him. Created by the Phoenix God. Demon Lord Three Knights pondered for a moment, then asked, "Do you have any way to enter the Divine Ruin Realm?" Jean Tai answered truthfully, "The passage to the Divine Ruin Realm is a bit strange. It only opens once every 100 years and there is still some time before it opens again. If you want to enter, you will have to wait until it opens again. This subordinate has no other way to enter. I didn't call you here to listen to your refusal, I wanted you to think of a way." Demon Lord Three Knights' eyes flashed with red light. "I let you rule the immortal world for so many years, yet you can't even do such a small thing. What's the difference between you and trash? What's the use of keeping you?" Jean Tai trembled in fear. Just as he was about to beg, his eyes suddenly moved and he revealed a look of joy, reporting to the Demon Lord, "Although I have no way to enter, there is someone who might have a way. However, I cannot invite that person. I'm afraid the Demon Lord will have to find him personally." Yan Zhuixing's eyes also lit up as he looked at Three Knights with some hope. "Who is so arrogant that I have to personally invite him?" Demon Lord Three Knights said, "Don't beat around the bush, just say who it is." "Old Man Mu of the Ancient Forest." Jean Tai observed his expression and said, "Back then, the reason why I was able to deal with that Myriad Swords demon monarch was because he gave me pointers in the Divine Ruin Realm, allowing me to find the Phoenix Plume and refine the Soul Transformation Smoke. In this subordinate's opinion, he should be very familiar with the Divine Ruin Realm." "Muyuanzi." Demon Monarch Three Knights muttered to himself. After seeing Yan Zhuixing's hopeful gaze, he closed his eyes and said, "All right. It's settled then, Kinta. Come with me to the ancient forest." Kintai's expression stiffened and he immediately panicked. He didn't expect that Sanyi would ask him to go with him. He immediately cursed Bai Qi in his heart. Why did he drag Old Man Mu into this? If they confronted each other later, wouldn't he die a horrible death? He had thought that as long as he didn't face Old Man Mu, he would have a million reasons to convince the Demon Lord of Three Knights that Old Man Mu was lying if he asked about it later. Given his temper, if he couldn't deal with Old Man Mu, he wouldn't have gone to look for Old Man Mu again and again. However, there was no other way. Demon Monarch Three Knights did as he said. After instructing Eunuch Li to guard the house well, he flung his scarlet cloak and flew away. Kintai didn't dare to hesitate and could only bite the bullet and chase after him. However, he already had an idea in his mind. He had the thought that it was better for him to die than for himself. Anyway, he wasn't the one who said it. He was prepared to push all the blame onto Bai Qi and think of a way to protect himself first. After the people in the courtyard dispersed, Yan Zhuixing led Wen Rui back to his heavily guarded mountain. He had just instructed Wen Rui to settle down and was about to return to his room to wait for news from Demon Monarch Three Knights when a guard ran in and reported, "Demon Monarch Qing Tian requests to see you." "Quickly invite him in," Yan Zhuixing ordered. He waited for a while before slowly walking out to welcome him. Although Demon Monarch Qing Tian was an old minister of the Devil World and had a higher cultivation than him, he didn't want others to see that he was eager to curry favor with him. Before he walked out of the inner courtyard, Demon Monarch Qing Tian walked over with a smile. He bowed and said, "Greetings, Vice Palace Lord." Yan Zhuixing cupped his hands politely and said, "May I know what advice Lord Qing Tian has for me?" How would this subordinate dare to give advice to Vice Palace Lord Yan? The Demon King of Qing Tian stroked his hair and said with a concerned expression, "I heard that the Vice Palace Master was frightened previously. I don't know if this physical body is suitable for you to possess. I'm proficient in a set of techniques, and I'm willing to help the Vice Palace Master loosen up your bones. After saying that, he looked around. Seeing that there was no one else around, he directly walked past Yan Zhuixing and entered his room. He waved his hand and said, Vice Palace Lord, quickly come and lie down on the bed. Yan Zhuixing was momentarily confused by her. He thought that she had something secretive to report. Who knew that just as he entered the room with a heavy heart, Demon Monarch Qing Tian closed the door and pulled Yan Zhuixing to press him down on the bed, really letting him massage him. What are you doing? Yan Zhuixing was shocked. Who knew that there was still more to come? Just as he was about to get up, Demon Monarch Qing Tian had already taken off her clothes and was on top of him. Yan Zhuixing flipped over and pushed her away. He flashed to the door and opened it. Standing at the door to prove that he was open and above board, he said, Lord Qing Tian, please leave quickly. I can pretend that I don't know anything. Demon Monarch Qing Tian laid on the bed and giggled seductively. Vice Palace Lord, what are you afraid of? I have been serving Lord Devil God all the way until Devil King 3 nights. My responsibility is to serve every generation's Devil King well. Vice Palace Lord will ascend to the Devil King's throne sooner or later, so there's no need to hold back. Even if Devil King knows, he won't say anything. Otherwise, Qing Tian wouldn't dare to disturb you. Yan Zhuixing had long heard of Demon Monarch Qing Tian's beauty. Although he knew that she had countless men in her bedchamber, and although his heart was moved by this woman, he wouldn't touch Devil King 3 nights woman before he ascended to the Devil King's throne. Who knew if she was sent to test him? He cupped his hands and said, I still have some things to do. Lord Qing Tian, please do as you wish. After saying that, he quickly left. After Yu Qianzhou brought Wen Rui to the celestial realm, they separated. He didn't know that Wen Rui had already betrayed him. In order to not alert the enemy in the celestial realm and to avoid directly going against Devil King 3 nights, Yu Qianzhou and Hong Tailong secretly captured a few people from the Devil Dao to interrogate them. They didn't manage to get any information about the Earth Spirit. It seemed like they didn't know who the Earth Spirit was. However, they did get information that Jin Tai was in the illusory Immortal City. In the underground space created by the Earth Art, Hong Tailong directly killed a captive that didn't get any information. He turned around and asked, What do we do? It seems like we still have to find high-level people from the Devil Dao to ask about the Earth Spirit's whereabouts. However, if we make a move, we will definitely alert others. We can't capture these small shrimps silently. We might be surrounded and attacked by other experts, or we might have to face Devil King 3 nights directly. Should we run further away and capture a Devil Dao expert in the Netherworld to ask? F***CK. Since we know where Jin Tai is, let's go to the illusory Immortal City to investigate. If we can capture Jin Tai, we should be able to ask him who the Earth Spirit is. Yu Qianzhou stared at him and asked, Do you dare to come with me? What am I afraid of? Hong Tailong patted his chest heroically. However, his aura instantly weakened as he reminded, If you can't win, you must remember to bring me along when you run. You worry too much. If something happens and I really can't save you in time, you can just bring Yi Tiankong out to protect yourself. Yu Qianzhou snickered. You really plan on leaving me behind if something happens? Hong Tailong was a little anxious. How could I? I promise I won't abandon you. I, Yu Qianzhou, have always been a man of my word. Once I say it, it's a done deal. Yu Qianzhou guaranteed with his character. Oh my god. Don't scare me. I'm really not a match for Devil King 3 nights. If you didn't say that, I would still be confident. But the moment you say it, I'm trembling in fear. This old dragon has personally seen you pull out the nail. Hong Tailong pulled him back and said anxiously, Explain it clearly first. If you don't explain it clearly, I won't take that risk. Cut the crap. With a mid-stage Great God Fire Soul Mystic weapon, are you still afraid that we won't have enough time to escape? Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and the two disappeared into the ground at the same time. In the center of the ancient forest, on top of the scarlet-red cliffs, a winding river quietly flowed above the exposed red rocks. The ancient language tree was covered with golden leaves like a golden umbrella. The nervous Jin Tai had been hoping that Devil King 3 nights wouldn't be able to find Mu Yuanzi. However, when he saw Devil King 3 nights flying in a certain direction, he immediately guessed that the other party probably had a way to find Mu Yuanzi. As expected, when he reached the ancient language tree, he saw Devil King 3 nights standing there, slapping the ancient language tree repeatedly. The entire ancient language tree shook violently. Jin Tai didn't know why he was doing this, so he waited silently to the side. After a while, Devil King 3 Knights stopped slapping the tree and slowly turned around to look behind him. Jin Tai suddenly turned around and saw Mu Yuanzi walking out of a wall of light with a large wooden staff. Mu Yuanzi stared at Jin Tai and shouted, "Jin Tai, how dare you ignore my words and come to my ancient forest? Do you really think I don't dare to kill you?" Jin Tai hurriedly flashed behind Devil King 3 Knights and stood with his hands behind his back. Devil King 3 Knights had brought him here to verify spiritual master Mu Yuanzi so that he wouldn't find the wrong person. Seeing this, Jin Tai didn't need to ask any questions to know that this person was definitely the person he was looking for. He smiled faintly and said, "When my devil Dao roamed the 3 realms, we always abided by our ancestors' teachings and didn't easily disturb the ancient forest. That's why Third Knight never had the chance to pay a visit to Senior Mu. I have no choice but to make a sudden visit this time. Please forgive me, Senior Mu." With this, Mu Yuanzi no longer paid attention to Jin Tai. Instead, he stared at Third Knight and said in a low voice, "You're the 3rd Devil King of the Devil World, Devil King 3 Knights?" His tone was somewhat shocked. Glancing at Jin Tai, he faintly guessed that this guy had probably reopened the Devil World. "That's right." Devil King 3 Knights cupped his hands slightly as a sign of respect. Chapter 1186. Mu Yuanzi stood there indifferently with his cane. Even the demon god of the past had to give him some face. He felt that 3 Knights' respect was only natural. He stood there and asked indifferently, "What business does the demon lord have in my ancient forest?" After so many years, 3 Knights had forgotten that there was someone who dared to put on airs in front of him. A faint red light appeared in his eyes and he lost interest in pleasantries. However, he still had a faint smile on his face. "I want to ask Senior Mu about something. 3 Knights has something to do in the Divine Ruin Realm, but it's not time to open yet, so I want to ask Senior to show me a way in." Mu Yuanzi's cold gaze swept over Jin Tai, and then he snorted, "With the Demon Lord's strength, unifying the 3 realms is not a problem. Do you want to even go to the Divine Ruin Realm? Listen to my advice, greed will not end well." This was a warning. The smile on Demon Lord 3 Knights' face disappeared, and the scarlet cape fluttering in the wind instantly stopped. He said indifferently, "I won't hide it from Senior. A pair of people use some unknown method to escape into the Divine Ruin Realm. I must kill them, so I ask Senior to show me the way." Mu Yuanzi's expression changed slightly and he said with a frown, "Is there someone in the 3 realms who knows how to open the Divine Ruin Realm?" "Who?" "Xianxia." Demon Lord 3 Knights didn't hide anything. "Xianxia?" Mu Yuanzi froze and then said in shock, "How can he open the passage to the Divine Ruin Realm?" "I don't know about this, but it seems that Senior Mu also knows Xianxia." Demon Lord 3 Knights' tone changed and he said word by word, "From Senior's words, you definitely know how to open the Divine Ruin Realm. Please teach me." "I don't know how to open the Divine Ruin Realm, so don't disturb me in the future," Mu Yuanzi said stiffly, and then turned to open the profound wave light wall to return to his Mu Killer Sea. "Mu Yuanzi, don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit." Demon Lord 3 Knights' cold and threatening voice sounded behind him. Mu Yuanzi abruptly turned around and slammed the wooden staff in his hand into the ground. His eyes shone brightly as he shouted, "Even demonic god, he doesn't dare to be so rude to me. Since when did it become your turn to be so impudent?" Under the golden leaves of the ancient language tree, the scarlet cape suddenly fluttered in the wind. Demon Monarch 3 Knights snorted coldly and said, "Mu Yuanzi, I won't beat around the bush with you." The ancestor Lord Devil God had crossed the mortal realm and god realm and accepted a disciple in the lower realm. Previously, Lord Devil God had directly torn open the void and saved the disciple's life from the divine realm. Now that the disciple's parents had fallen into the hands of Yu Qianqiu, San Yi, as a descendant of Devil God, naturally had to share Devil God's burden. He couldn't let Lord Devil God personally take care of everything. "This concerns Lord Devil God's face, so I, San Yi, have no choice but to help." "What?" Mu Yuanzi exclaimed when he heard this. He did not think that the demonic god would actually accept a disciple from the lower realm, and he did not think that the demonic god would directly come from the immortal world to help this disciple. Not to mention that this cultivation was too shocking, the demonic god's actions were even more shocking. Demon Monarch 3 Knights snorted and continued. If you are willing to help me, I, Sanyi, will follow the old rules of the Knight clan and restrict the heroes of the Devil Dao from invading your ancient forest. But if you don't give me this face, then don't blame me for not caring about the feelings of the older generation. For Lord Devil God, I, Sanyi, can do anything and I will do it at any cost. Although your cultivation is higher than mine, you should know the power of my Devil God arts. If we fight, it's not certain who will win. If I want to destroy your ancient forest, it will only take an instant. You won't be able to do anything to me. I hope that Senior will reconsider and not force Sanyi to do something he doesn't want to do. This was a completely naked threat and also a final ultimatum. It was clearly telling Mu Yuanzi that he had to agree whether he wanted to or not. Hiding to the side, Jin Tai was secretly envious of Demon Monarch 3 Knight's strength. He didn't know when he would have such an awe-inspiring moment. Mu Yuanzi's gaze was fixed on the unmoving Demon Monarch 3 Knights. His expression was dark and gloomy. No one had ever threatened him like this in many years, but he knew that Demon Monarch 3 Knights was speaking the truth. He had interacted with the Devil God before, so he naturally knew how terrifying the Devil God arts were. Although Sanye's cultivation was slightly lower than his, it was almost impossible for him to defeat Sanyi. Moreover, he knew that there was an even more terrifying person behind Sanyi. That person wore white robes and a white hat, and had been following Devil God Knight for a long time. His strength was extremely terrifying, but he was unusually low-key and loyal to the Knight clan. After some thought, Mu Yuanzi gave in. There was another important reason why he gave in. That was because he didn't have a good impression of Yu Qianqiu to begin with. Yu Qianqiu's elemental magic arts inexplicably made him feel a little apprehensive. Logically speaking, with Yu Qianqiu's cultivation he shouldn't have felt this way, but every time he saw Yu Qianqiu he would feel a little uneasy. Mu Yuanzi took out a jade archive, quickly injected something into it and threw it to Demon Monarch 3 Knights. He warned sternly, I hope you keep your promise. Otherwise this old man will make you regret it. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his staff and summoned a wall of light. His figure flashed into it, and the wall of light that rippled like water also disappeared. Demon Monarch 3 Knights looked at the jade archive for a while, then slowly nodded. So that's how it is. Come, let's go back. He transformed into a streak of light and quickly flew away. Jin Tai, on the other hand, was stunned. He didn't think that the two of them wouldn't talk about what he was worried about because they didn't get along. He happily chased after him. Under the night sky, in illusory Immortal City, Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong, who had killed 2 devil soldiers, changed into their clothes. They had more or less figured out the situation in illusory Immortal City. The defenses here weren't as tight as they thought, because the demonic cultivators didn't believe that anyone from the Netherworld or Immortal Realm would have the guts to come here and throw their lives away. Although they didn't manage to find out who the Earth Spirit was, they managed to find out the mountain where Jin Tai and Yan Zhuixing lived. The two of them hid underground. Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth and said, that bastard Yan Zhuixing really isn't dead yet. He'll definitely be a disaster if we let him live. Then which one are you planning to make a move on? Hong Tailong unnaturally tugged at his clothes that were a little too small. He frowned and said, don't blame me for not reminding you. Although the defenses here aren't tight, there are many experts here. If we make a move on one of them, we'll definitely alert the others. We won't have a chance to target the other one. Have you thought clearly about who to make a move on? After some hesitation, Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said with a bitter smile, let's put aside the grudge between me and that bastard for now. Emotion's 2 attacks have already made me lose the confidence to kill him. Now that Jin Tai has been defeated by Demon Monarch 3 Knights, the mountain he lives in doesn't even have any subordinates or guards. It's a good opportunity for us to make a move. Let's go, we'll deal with Jin Tai first. Alright, think so too. Hong Tailong rubbed his palms together and said. The two of them emerged from the ground. In order to not arouse suspicion, they swaggered through the mountain range. When they found the mountain Jin Tai lived in, they discovered that there really weren't any guards inside or outside the manor. The two of them directly flew in. The moment they landed, Hong Tailong rolled his eyes and shouted with his throat pinched, Jin Tai, Demon Monarch is looking for you. Jin Tai, Demon Monarch is looking for you. However, even after searching the entire manor twice, they couldn't find a single person. Hong Tailong pretended to be mysterious and shouted for a long time, but no one answered. Finally, they confirmed that Jin Tai wasn't here, or that he had left due to some matters. In the end, the two of them decided that if they couldn't find Jin Tai, they would take the opportunity to kill Yan Zhuixing. Thus they found the mountain Yan Zhuixing lived in. However, the guards outside the manor were extremely tight. The two of them didn't dare to force their way in and alert the enemy. In the end, they sneakily used the earth art at the foot of the mountain and directly appeared in the manor at the top of the mountain. Demon King Qing Tian was still lying naked on Yan Zhuixing's bed, but she pulled a golden blanket to cover her body. She didn't believe that Yan Zhuixing wouldn't come back. This time, if she didn't take advantage of the fact that Demon Monarch 3 Knights wasn't here, she would definitely not stop. She was very confident in her body and didn't believe that Yan Zhuixing could keep rejecting her. Suddenly he heard the sound of sneaky footsteps outside. The Azure Sky Demon King instantly covered his mouth and laughed. Who would dare to sneak around Vice Palace Head Yan's residence other than Yan Zhuixing? Who else could it be? Yan Zhuixing might even want to see if he was still there. He immediately chuckled and said, "Vice Palace Head Yan, the Demon Monarch has brought Jin Tai out. What are you afraid of? This servant is about to fall asleep from waiting. Come quickly." Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong, who were sneaking around in the courtyard, were instantly stunned. So Demon Monarch 3 Knights brought Jin Tai out. No wonder they couldn't find Jin Tai. This meant that Demon Monarch 3 Knights wasn't in the illusory Immortal City. Furthermore, they had a great god intermediate stage Fire Soul Mystic Soldier. What was there to be afraid of? The two of them exchanged delighted glances and mistakenly thought that they had found the right place. Yan Zhuixing was having an affair in the house. Yu Qianqiu transmitted a message. "That bastard is sleeping with a woman inside. I will guard outside to prevent him from escaping. You will barge in and sneak attack him while he is distracted. You must use all your strength to kill him in one strike." As he spoke, he took out his god arrow in preparation. Hong Tailong smiled evilly and nodded. Without saying anything else, he directly broke through the window and entered. Suddenly, a woman's stern shout came from inside. "Who is it?" Boom. There was a loud explosion that shook the earth and the mountains. The house was instantly blasted into smithereens. Soil, rocks, and wood shavings flew everywhere. 2 streams of light shot into the sky. Hong Tailong looked at the other party with his mouth agape. He didn't expect that there was no one else in the room. It was just a naked woman. Furthermore, her cultivation was very high. In the sky, the completely naked Demon Monarch Qing Tian flashed with a green light. He had already put on a set of clothes and his face was filled with killing intent. Yu Qianqiu knew that things weren't going well. Just as he was about to say that he had fallen into a trap and retreat, he suddenly heard Yan Zhuixing's voice shouting from the other side of the courtyard. "What's the matter?" He had already flown into the sky. All the guards had also quickly flashed into the sky. People from all directions immediately rushed over upon hearing the voice. "He is Yan Zhuixing. Quickly kill him." Yu Qianqiu pointed to the sky and shouted angrily. The god arrow in his hand had already turned into thousands of streams of light and shot out. Chapter 1187. When Yan Zhuixing heard this unforgettable voice, he was also shocked. When he looked down and saw his old foe, he cried out involuntarily, "Yu Qianqiu." He was truly afraid of Yu Qianqiu. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect Yu Qianqiu to actually dare to come here to assassinate him. Yu Qianqiu was too daring. When he saw the familiar 10,000 golden lights shooting over, he instantly shivered in fear. Without saying anything, he turned around and ran. Hong Tailong also didn't say anything and wanted to chase after him. The clear sky Great Demon King shouted, "Protect Vice Palace Lord Yan." His voice reverberated in all directions as he teleported to block Hong Tailong. In the blink of an eye, the two of them engaged in a fierce battle in the sky. Knowing that the Demon Lord 3 Knights wasn't around, Yu Qianqiu's guts grew. The 10,000 golden lights were like his arms and fingers. He rushed into the group of people blocking him and slaughtered them. The 10,000 divine swords were unstoppable, and the people blocking him fled with their hands covering their heads. Yu Qianqiu's divine swords protected him and was invincible. He instantly broke through the encirclement and shouted angrily, "Yan Zhuixing, stop right there." He immediately chased after him. He swore that he wouldn't stop until he killed him. "How dare you?" At this moment, experts rushed over from all directions and mercilessly joined hands to stop Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was too low. Even with the divine swords in hand, he could only barely protect himself. He had no choice but to retract the 10,000 divine swords to protect himself. Boom! On the other side, the clear sky Great Demon King, who was fighting fiercely with Hong Tailong, suddenly exploded with countless wooden roots. The sky was filled with nowhere to hide, and it directly wrapped around Hong Tailong. Roar! A dragon's roar shook the 9 heavens. Bang! Countless wooden roots were blasted away. A 2,000 feet long red dragon was incomparably majestic. It danced in the sky in a shocking manner. At the same time, a stream of light passed through the countless wooden roots in the dragon's claw, and a golden chain directly wrapped around the clear sky Great Demon King's neck. Dragon! Cries of surprise could be heard from all around. The Azure Sky Devil King's expression changed even more. She used all her strength but still could not break free from the dragon binding rope. On the roof of the Heartless Palace's former branch, Eunuch Li, who was dressed in white and wearing a white hat, stood with his hands behind his back as he looked over. After seeing the giant red dragon, his calm pupils constricted a little. Yan Zhuixing, who was hiding beside him, heaved a sigh of relief. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu was struggling to move forward, the huge dragon's claw swung the chain, and with a hong sound, the Azure Sky Great Demon King, who was unable to move freely, directly collapsed a mountain. The Azure Sky Great Demon King was immediately decapitated, and his head was separated from his corpse. Roar! Another dragon roar sounded, and the 2 dragon binding ropes in the giant dragon's claws lashed out in all directions like thunder, charging directly at Yu Qianqiu. Meanwhile, the Demon King of Qing Tian, who had fallen to the ground with his head separated from his body, suddenly stood up. The headless corpse waved its hand toward the distance, and the head immediately flew back. The head reattached to the neck and the hands returned to normal. Damn it! The Demon King of Qing Tian let out a furious roar that sounded like a ferocious spirit. With a teleportation, the other 6 great demon kings who were overseeing this place also flashed over at the same time. The 7 great demon kings surrounded the extremely arrogant huge dragon and gave it a violent beating, causing Hong Tailong to howl in pain. After all, the great demon king's cultivation was not to be trifled with. It was only because his dragon race's flesh and blood body was extremely strong. If it was someone else, they would have been killed long ago. However, he was also beaten to the point where his entire body was covered in blood. The situation was critical and Yu Qianqiu could no longer hold back. He had already prepared the true Samadhi fire in Utopia for emergency use, and he summoned the infernal soldier that was condensed from the true Samadhi fire that he had prepared in Utopia in case of an emergency. The true Samadhi fire charged out of the encirclement of the 10,000 divine swords, and in an instant, the experts who were heavily encircled outside were beaten to a pulp. In the blink of an eye, several hundred experts fell to the ground while wailing in pain from the inextinguishable 7-colored flames. Once the infernal soldier broke free, it charged toward Hong Tailong to help him out. True Samadhi fire. Countless exclamations rang out in the illusory immortal city. The 7 demon kings who had joined hands were taken aback. Before they could react, one of them was smacked into a ball of fire by the infernal soldier, and he fell to the ground while spitting out fresh blood. The remaining 6 demon kings did not expect that the cultivation level of this infernal soldier would be so high, and he could instantly kill a great demon king with just a raise of his hand. They were instantly scared out of their wits, and they immediately teleported away without any hesitation. When Hong Tailong broke free and saw that he had the help of a great god infernal soldier, he immediately roared, "All of you die!" Shaking his head and wagging his tail, he chased after them. Hong Tailong, come back here. Let's retreat. Yu Qianqiu shouted madly, and at the same time he took out the last of his reserves without caring about the price. All the true Samadhi fire that he had stored in his body gushed out, and the surrounding people instantly let out countless wails of pain. After the true Samadhi fire exploded, it quickly retracted and attached itself to the 10,000 divine swords. Rainbow lights danced in the air, and they directly opened up a path of blood, charging towards the returning Hong Tailong. The 2 of them were preparing to rendezvous and leave this place. Seeing that the 2 of them wanted to escape, Eunuch Li, who was standing with his hands behind his back, let out a cold snort. He put down his hands behind his back and his figure disappeared from the roof. Yan Zhuixing looked left and right and instantly felt a little unsafe. Hong Tailong, who was hurriedly returning, suddenly realized that his neck had stiffened, and he stopped flying in the air. Yu Qianzhou cried out in alarm, "Hong Tailong, be careful." A large illusory hand suddenly appeared in the sky, and with a speed as fast as lightning, it grabbed Hong Tailong's neck. With just a bit of force, Hong Tailong spurted out a mouthful of blood, and a large tongue dangled out like the tongue of a dog under the shade of a tree. His two large eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. If that giant hand wanted to kill Hong Tailong, it would be as easy as pinching an ant to death. Yu Qianzhou saw that person in white clothes and white hat high up in the sky. The giant hand was illusory from his body, and he immediately said in a stern voice, "Yi Tiankong's little life is in my hands. Try and kill him." The expressionless eunuch Li's countenance changed when he heard that. He suddenly stared at Yu Qianzhou, and the giant hand grabbed Hong Tailong and smashed him. A red light shot towards the ground, and with a boom, the ground trembled. Hong Tailong's enormous body directly blasted a deep pit on the ground. Meanwhile, the Fire Soul Profound weapon had already pounced into the sky, and a fist was blasted out like a thunderbolt. The illusory giant hand on eunuch Li's body clenched into a fist, and actually clashed with the incoming heavy fist. With a loud bang, the astral winds that rippled out were like millions of mountains that were pushed down in all directions. The entire psychedelic Immortal city immediately suffered the baptism of an incomparably powerful shock wave. The visible wave of air that spread out was like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. In an instant, countless mountains were flung away, houses and buildings were turned into ashes, and there were even innumerable figures that were instantly torn into pieces. Hong Tailong, who had transformed back into his human form, had just climbed out of the deep pit when he was struck by the powerful wave of air. He spat out blood and fell into the deep pit and was almost buried alive. The quick-witted Yu Qianzhou instantly fused the 10,000 swords into one to form a steel ball to protect his body, and directly burrowed into the depths of the ground. However, he still felt the enormous pressure coming from the ground. He didn't dare to delay as he was afraid that Hong Tailong's life would be in danger. He quickly broke through the ground and went into the deep pit. He grabbed Hong Tailong and was about to escape. "Wait. Your Fire Soul Profound weapon." Hong Tailong, who was on the verge of death, grabbed him and said. After the two experts collided in the sky, they rapidly separated. The true Samadhi fire that was condensed on the Fire Soul Profound weapon had already been shaken to the point that a lot of it had already dispersed. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and the Fire Soul Profound weapon repeatedly teleported over. In the night sky, eunuch Li's eyes were as bright as day. His figure flashed, and his original body similarly teleported repeatedly as he rapidly chased after Hong Tailong. A huge hand appeared once again, and directly stretched out its claws to pierce towards the back of the Fire Soul Profound weapon. When the Fire Soul Profound weapon neared the deep pit, it flipped over and retaliated with a fist. Bang! Another earth-shattering bang resounded. After all, the Fire Soul Profound weapon was a dead object that relied on energy to support itself. Without the support of sufficient true Samadhi fire, in addition to the fact that it had already suffered a heavy injury and consumed a huge amount of energy, how could it still persist? Bang! The majestic true Samadhi fire instantly exploded, and a purple bead shot into the deep pit like a meteor. After that, a huge claw directly blasted away the raging true Samadhi fire and chased after the purple bead. Yu Qianzhou was greatly shocked. He waved his hand at the bead that was shooting over and instantly disappeared with Hong Tailong. Boom! The ground trembled, and the claw that was stabbing down directly shook open the deep pit into an abyss that extended in all directions. Eunuch Li, who had shot down rapidly from the sky, immediately dove into the abyss. The ground trembled violently again, and huge chunks of soil that were hundreds of meters or even thousands of meters in radius continuously flew into the sky. The few great demon kings that were protecting Yan Zhuixing were shocked. Just now, Eunuch Li's attack had already implicated tens of thousands of their own people. How could they dare to stay any longer? They immediately protected Yan Zhuixing and quickly left again. Countless demon Dao experts were also scared out of their wits as they quickly fled in all directions. In just a short while, the entire huge illusory immortal city had been dug out. All the mountains, land and water were gone. All of them had flown into the sky, and a terrifyingly huge pit had appeared below. Even underground lava had begun to gush out. It was unimaginable how a person could dig out such a huge pit in such a short period of time. Countless chunks of soil from the sky didn't even have time to fall. Uniquely stood at the center of the huge pit with a gloomy expression. After scanning the surroundings, he flew into the sky, and the countless chunks of soil that covered the starry sky finally fell down with a rumble. In just a short while, the entire pit was filled up again. The ground trembled, and as the endless dust covered the sky, Uniquely had come out of the ground again. He floated in the sky and looked down silently. His expression was so gloomy that it seemed like water could be squeezed out of it. He didn't say anything for a long time. Ever since he had ascended as a demon god, he had never made a move easily. Once he did, he had never failed. However, he had failed today. He had let two people with lower cultivation than him slip away under his nose. Furthermore, they were two people with lower cultivation than him. Demon King 3 knights who had rushed back through the night, had heard the commotion here from far away. In a great shock, he had sped up and rushed back. He had encountered many of his subordinates that had scattered. When he arrived at the illusory Immortal city, he discovered that the entire city had been destroyed. The entire landscape had changed, as if a divine plow had fallen from the sky and plowed through everything. Even with his vast experience and knowledge, he was secretly shocked. Seeing the silent Uniquely floating in the sky, he quickly went over and asked, "What happened?" Uniquely took a deep breath, and his gloomy expression returned to normal. He bowed slightly to Demon King 3 knights and said, Xianxia snuck into the illusory Immortal city to assassinate the Vice Palace Lord in the middle of the night. This subordinate's attack wasn't good, and he still managed to escape. What? Demon King 3 knights was shocked. Even you let him escape? Chapter 1188. At the same time, he quickly looked around and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw a few demon kings protecting Zhou Xian. The demonic path army that had scattered in all directions also regrouped. All of them looked at Uniquely with lingering fear, frightened by his methods. At this moment, Jintai also hurried back and looked around in bewilderment. Uniquely quietly floated to 3 knights' side and said solemnly, "Let's not talk about this subordinate's incompetence for now." What shocked this subordinate the most was that there was a huge red dragon that came with Xianxia to assassinate him. Dragon? Demon King 3 knights suddenly turned around and said, "You mean a dragon from the god realm? A huge red dragon?" Jintai smacked his lips and suddenly exclaimed, "Could it be Hong Tai Long? Could it be that he's not dead?" Uniquely slowly looked at him and nodded slightly. "That's right. Xianxia called that huge red dragon Hong Tai Long." Demon King 3 knights also turned around and revealed a questioning look. Jintai hurriedly bowed and explained that Hong Tai Long was the mount of that demon lord of 10,000 swords. However, I personally saw him and demon lord of 10,000 swords fall into the soul-transforming smoke. I didn't expect him to still be alive. This subordinate is worried that demon lord of 10,000 swords is still alive. However, since the divine arrow is in Xianxia's hands, the chances of demon lord of 10,000 swords surviving are not high. Otherwise, he would definitely come for revenge. I didn't expect the god realm's dragon race to also participate in this matter. Demon King 3 knights' eyes flickered. The dragon is not worthy of fear. This subordinate can easily kill him. Uniquely suddenly reported with a serious expression. Just as this subordinate was about to kill that dragon, Xianxia suddenly called out 4th young master's name. What? Demon King 3 knights' body trembled. He turned around and looked at Uniquely in disbelief. "What did you just say?" Jintai was stunned. He didn't know where this 4th young master came from. Back when he was in the demon realm, the demon lord only had 2 sons. This subordinate dares not speak nonsense. Uniquely bowed, looked at San Yi and slowly said, Xianxia said that Yi Tiankong's life was in his hands. I don't know how he knew 4th young master's name, and I don't know if it's true or false, but it did make this subordinate hesitate to take action. Night Sky. Jintai thought about it carefully. He had no impression of this name at all. It should be the first time he had heard of it. Xianxia. Demon Lord 3 knights squeezed out these 3 words from between his teeth. He then flung his scarlet cape and said with a cold glint in his eyes, "I don't care if what he said is true or false. Immediately gather the army and make detailed preparations. This attack must be foolproof. We can't let him escape again. When this lord enters the Divine Ruins realm, I will capture him and personally interrogate him." Eunuch Li did not forget to remind him, Demon Lord, you must not underestimate Yu Qianqiu. This person can actually summon a middle-stage great god fireman, and it is a fireman condensed from true samadhi fire, forcing me to not dare to go all out. He is not simple. There is such a thing. Demon Lord Three Knights stared at Jin Tai, as if he wanted to hear his explanation. Jin Tai hurriedly bowed and said, this subordinate has never heard of any true samadhi fireman. As Yu Qianqiu's cultivation increased day by day, the territory of Utopia became wider and wider, and the sea had already appeared. On an isolated island in the depths of the sea, two figures fell to the ground, sprawled on the ground, panting. Damn it! The demonic path is indeed full of experts. I thought that after Demon Lord Three Knights left I would be able to deal with him, but who knew that an incomparably powerful guy would appear? Even my middle-stage great god fire soul profound weapon couldn't stop him, too terrifying. Hong Tai Long. Yu Qianqiu got up, shook Hong Tai Long who was covered in blood and said anxiously, are you all right? I won't die yet. Hong Tai Long sat up and said with a bitter smile, that person is indeed powerful. If you didn't say Yi Tiankong's name at the crucial moment, I would have probably died in his hands. I'll send you to the Divine Ruin Realm to recuperate. At least there will be someone to take care of you when you need it. Yu Qianqiu stood up. He was fine but he was scared out of his wits. Hong Tai Long patted the blood and mud on his face. Hearing the hidden meaning in Yu Yang's words, he raised his head and asked, what do you want to do? I'll make a trip to the netherworld and think of a way to find out who the Earth Spirit is. If I don't devour the Earth Spirit and refine more high-grade Earth Soul profound weapons, we won't have any hope of winning against the demonic path. Yu Qianqiu sighed. With a wave of his hand the two of them disappeared. Returning to the Divine Ruin Realm, Wei Chuanqiu and the others were shocked to see Hong Tai Long heavily injured. Yu Qianqiu left Hong Tai Long for them to take care of, then slipped away to the netherworld. In the dark netherworld he was like a lonely night walker, searching for the ray of light that could change the fate of the three realms, even though his own methods weren't bright. Outside the Divine Ruin Realm, in the depths of the endless granite mountain range, was the entrance to the Divine Ruin Realm from the Immortal Realm. Boom! Following a not too loud sound, the entrance, which was originally sealed, suddenly reopened. A dot of white light expanded and rotated in the cave. Outside the cave, the 3 million demonic army covered the sky and earth. Demon Lord Three Knights flashed to the top of the mountain and looked down. Eunuch Li, who was beside him, waved his hand and the 3 million army moved, rushing into the passage like a heavenly river flowing backwards. Under Wen Rui's guidance, the army that entered the Divine Ruin Realm quickly dispersed towards the base of the human army, flanking the two sides. The demonic army held their breaths and concentrated, moving stealthily under the cover of the fog. The order that the various armies received was to completely surround the base of the human army. Before receiving the order to attack, no one was allowed to act on their own, alerting the enemy. When the remaining 100,000 troops, under the leadership of the Demon King Qing Tian, guarded the entrance to the Divine Ruin Realm, Demon Lord Three Knights led Eunuch Li and the others into the Divine Ruin Realm. Due to Yu Qianqiu's momentary softness, a huge net was currently surrounding the human army, and a catastrophic disaster was approaching the human army from all directions. Fortunately, Zhang Ping used the transparent spider silk of the temple rainbow spiders 100 miles away from the base to set up a communication device in the misty mountain range. Once they received the report, the people hiding in the surroundings immediately became alert and quickly checked. When they saw the densely packed group of people quietly approaching the base, they were all shocked and quickly crushed their communication jade talismans. Some people didn't even have the time to report before they were discovered and died on the spot. Ah! A few screams sounded in the quiet fog. Yan Zhuixing, who was following behind Demon Lord Three Knights, waved his devil blade and cut through the transparent spider web beside him. He gritted his teeth and said, "Demon Lord, it looks like we've been discovered." Demon Lord Three Knights coldly snorted, "Pass down the order. Everyone advance at full speed." Eunuch Li immediately gave the order, and the armies that were quietly approaching the base from all directions no longer carefully concealed their tracks. They all whistled as they surrounded the base. Inside the base, Zhang Ping, who was standing in front of the sand table map, received the reports from all over. With just a glance at the sand table, He knew that the base had already been surrounded by a large group of people. He quickly rushed out, crushed his communication jade archive, and ordered the various armies to attack. At the same time he shouted, "Enemy attack!" Close to 10,000 heroes instantly surged out of the base. They were already fully equipped in extraterrestrial metal armor, as if they were ghosts that had crawled out of the ground. Zhang Ping was also dressed in battle armor. He stood on top of a hill, looked around and shouted, "Defend the base at all costs." Yes. The 10,000 soldiers shouted and quickly formed a defensive formation. The 11th Army's million men moved in full force according to their previous training, quickly entering the designated battle location. Before they could even catch their breaths, they were immediately assaulted by a torrential wave of attacks. They were attacked from all directions at the same time, and the battle reached its climax in the blink of an eye. In an instant, blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Rumble! The deafening sound shook the heavens and the earth. Almost everyone in the base came out in shock. Even Bai Suzhen and the injured Hong Tailong were no exception. The men and women who had surged out of the base were all asking what was going on. Zhang Ping had no idea what was going on, but he was afraid that something would happen to these people. He quickly shouted at the men and women, "All of you retreat." However, these arrogant men and women were all rubbing their palms together, thinking that they could be of help. Only Hong Tailong heard the commotion in the distance and knew that something was wrong. His expression changed and he said, "Not good. There are quite a few experts who can contact you, Xianxia. Quickly summon him back, we need to retreat." Zhang Ping knew that an expert like him would not speak without thinking, so he quickly took out his small silver ball. Hibiscus also took out her silver ball, and so did 100 Charms Enchantress. The million-strong army from the human world had only been training for less than a year, but they all thought that they were invincible with numbers. They were full of ambition and wanted to show off their skills. Little did they know that if they could really be invincible, Yu Qianqiu would have dragged them out to fight a long time ago. However, there were indeed some benefits to this. The first wave of arrogance was actually resisted by their frenzied attacks. However, when the demonic path experts opened up a path and tore them apart, deafening explosions and miserable screams rang out endlessly. The human army was simply unable to withstand a single blow. In addition, the difference in cultivation was too great, so they were immediately faced with an inhumane massacre. "Just these little bastards want to block my demonic path army." Demon Lord Three Knights looked down from the sky and snorted disdainfully. He sniffed the stench of blood and said coldly, "Have all the armies slowly advance. Surround them from both the sky and the ground. Don't let a single person escape today." With a wave of his cloak, he led Eunuch Li and the others to rapidly advance. In the face of enemies who were superior in both numbers and strength, and in the face of this asymmetrical battle, the morale of the millions of soldiers in the human world was instantly crushed. The survivors turned around and fled, not listening to any military orders or *T orders. Running for their lives was the most important thing. The demonic path army was not in a hurry to give chase. Instead, they formed a tight encirclement and slowly advanced. Chapter 1189. Hong Qi and Gu Qingyun, who were nearby, saw that defeat was inevitable. They couldn't stop the enemy's attack at all, and they couldn't stop the army from dispersing. They knew that everything was over. Amidst the fierce attack, the two of them looked at each other from afar and quickly escaped together. Suddenly, the two of them felt a chill on their waist and lost their sense of direction at the same time. Both of them fell from the sky and saw the lower half of their bodies still spurting blood. The countenances of the two of them changed drastically. They crashed heavily into the ground and rolled on the ground facing each other. Gu Qingyun coughed up blood as he looked at Hong Qi and smiled miserably. "To think that we would have such an ending." Hong Qi also kept spurting out blood from his mouth. He said while gurgling, "Wrong choice." Gu Qingyun turned his head and looked at the densely packed and slowly advancing demonic army in the sky. Then he grabbed Hong Qi's hand strenuously and said with a weak breath, "What did you say?" Hong Qi tightened his grip on Chu Yang's hand. His eyes widened, but his pupils were gradually dilating. He panted and said, "Back then Master asked Zhang Ping and me to choose between the metal incantation art or the earth incantation art. I chose the metal incantation art. If I had chosen the earth incantation art, today we could have escaped from underground." After she said those words with great effort, her gaze became completely unfocused. It was unknown whether Gu Qingyun, whose eyes were wide open in a daze, heard what she said. In any case, the two of them held each other's hands tightly and stopped moving. The fog above the base was swept away by a strong air current. Demon King 3 Knights was in front. Yan Zhuixing and Eunuch Li were behind him on both sides. Behind them were Jintai, Hutu, Hitorigami, and Moro, the 4 great Demon King level powerhouses, standing in a row. The 7 of them looked down coldly. Moro's 100,000 army directly plunged down from the sky and surrounded the entire valley, preventing the scattered army from entering. At the same time, it also prevented the people inside from escaping. The expressions of the men and women below changed drastically as they raised their heads to look at the sky. Hong Tailong realized that the white-robed man with a profound cultivation was still standing behind the mighty-looking man with the cloak on his shoulders. He immediately whispered, "This person should be the Demon King 3 Knights. We are not his match. Everyone retreat quickly." Yan Zhuixing sneered in the sky. "Great. Those important to you Xianxia are all here." Jintai's gaze suddenly looked down at Ji Wu and Immortal Crocodile Lord, not knowing why they were here. Finally, his gaze landed on Hong Tailong and found that it was indeed the Hong Tailong from back then. Seeing that these people were trying to escape into the underground base, the 3 Knights Demon Lord waved his hand, and the 4 Demon King level experts teleported down. They lined up in a row and blocked the entrance. The expressions of Hong Tailong and the others changed drastically. Hong Tailong and said coldly, "Who you?" Demon King 3 Knights stared at the earth spirit below. "To you is you, Tailong Knight." Demon King Hutu cupped his hands and stomped on the ground. The entrance behind him was instantly blocked by mud. Hong Tailong suddenly turned around and looked at Demon King Hutu with surprise and joy. He did not expect this person to be in Yu Qianchou. Just as his gaze turned to Jintai, he heard Demon King 3 Knights snort. "Where is Yu Qianchou?" Hibiscus and the other women's faces were filled with fear. No one below answered. Yan Zhuixing, who found a chance to vent, immediately shouted, "You dare not answer Demon King's question? You are courting death." The floating demon blade behind him shot down and a golden chain flew out. Boom! Hong Tailong's dragon binding rope knocked the demon blade away. "You dare to show off with your puny cultivation." Hong Tailong swung the dragon binding rope in his hand and sneered. Yan Zhuixing made a fool of himself in front of everyone. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as he hurriedly recalled the demon blade that was knocked away. "Then let this lord see how high your cultivation is." Demon King 3 Knights waved his hand, and a torrential demon cloud surged out from behind his scarlet cape. A huge demon claw grabbed down from the sky. Hong Tailong's dragon binding rope quickly lashed out, but it was nimbly caught by the demon claw. With a light shake, the flesh on Hong Tailong's palms split open and blood gushed out. He took a few steps back and blood flowed out of his mouth. The dragon binding rope was instantly snatched away. "Kill!" Zhang Peng suddenly shouted, and close to 10,000 hero soldiers surged out from the valley. A group of warriors wearing heavenly metal armor fearlessly charged at Demon King 3 Knights and the others in the sky. Close to 1,000 people charged at Jintai's group of 4. Immediately after, Zhang Peng took the opportunity to slap the ground, and the group of people quickly sank into the ground. They wanted to sacrifice close to 10,000 subordinates to fight for a chance to escape. However, the opponent's cultivation was too high, so high that it was beyond his imagination. A golden cloud rod suddenly appeared in Jintai's hand, and it became longer and larger, sweeping in all directions. The close to 1,000 people didn't even have the chance to get close. The other 3 great demon kings were calm and unruffled, as though they couldn't be bothered to make a move. However, seeing that they wanted to escape, Great Demon King Hutu coldly snorted, "You dare to show off your earth elemental arts in front of me." He raised his foot and stomped. Just as everyone sank halfway into the ground rapidly rebounded, and the group of people was pushed back. Zhang Peng's face instantly turned pale and he thought to himself, "It's over." In the sky, the demon claw's dragon binding rope created a monstrous whip shadow. Clang clang. The figures that rushed up were all sent flying. The defense of the heavenly metal armor was indeed strong. Even Demon King 3 Knights couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. With his cultivation he was actually unable to break through the sturdy armor. However, his cultivation was too high. As long as he hit, the heavenly metal armor would immediately crumble, and blood would spurt out from the gaps of the armor. The people inside had no chance of survival. Although the heroic army wasn't afraid of death, this wasn't a battlefield that belonged to their level. The difference was like heaven and earth, and they would only be sending themselves to their deaths. At this moment, Xianxia, who was in the underworld, suddenly heard the urgent calls of so many people. He immediately knew that something had happened, but he didn't know what had happened. He hurriedly rushed back to the base, and when he quickly reached the exit of the base, he found that the exit was sealed. Just as he was about to break through the ground, he suddenly heard Yan Zhuixing's fierce shout coming from outside. Coupled with the sounds of battle that hadn't subsided yet, his expression immediately changed. Without hesitation, he quickly returned to the depths of the base and broke into the secret cave whereby Hua Fairy and Yan Zixia were imprisoned. As soon as he saw him rushing in with a murderous aura, Ferdinand was shocked and blocked the mother and daughter, saying, "You Xianxia. Everything can be discussed, they didn't do anything wrong to you. Get lost." Yu Qianzhou shouted angrily. With a wave of his hand, he directly sent Ferdinand back to Utopia. The mother and daughter tried to block and protect each other in fear, but Yu Qianzhou didn't say anything and sent 2 balls of Samadhi true fire into the mother and daughter's bodies, knocking them out. Then he grabbed them and broke through the soil layer above to rush out of the ground. "Stop. All of you stand down." Yu Qianzhou's fierce shout came from afar and everyone looked over. In the blink of an eye, there were only about 1,000 people left in the heroic army. When they saw that it was him who gave the order, they quickly dodged and surrounded Zhang Ping and the others to protect them. Yu Qianzhou carried the mother and daughter and flew over, but he was blocked by the Mara army. Yu Qianzhou lifted the mother and daughter up to show everyone with a gloomy expression. Yan Zhuixing exclaimed, "Mother, sister." Be it Eunuch Li, Jin Tai and the other great demon kings, they all looked at each other. Demon Lord 3 Knights retracted the demonic claw that he had condensed and held the dragon-taming rope in his hand. He shouted coldly, "Let him come over." The Mara army quickly opened up a path and quickly intercepted and killed the people who came over. God knew how many people cried out to him for help. "Disciplinary envoy, save me." Yu Qianzhou carried the 2 of them and flew to the sky above the base. He looked around, and everywhere he looked there were corpses strewn all over. Under such a blatant massacre, many people cried out to him for help when they saw him, but he couldn't do anything. This made his heart feel like it was being cut by a knife, but he knew that now wasn't the time to be impulsive. He had to stay calm or else he might not be able to save anyone. Furthermore, he couldn't bring so many people away at once. "Yan Zhuixing, your mother and sister are in my hands. Hurry up and tell your subordinates to stop." Yu Qianzhou shouted with a sinister expression. He carried the mother and daughter and slowly landed in front of everyone. 10,000 golden flying swords flew out from his sleeves and danced in the sky, protecting everyone behind him. The fire soul mystic weapon condensed by the true Samadhi fire also appeared out of nowhere and protected him. Hong Tailong and the others saw that Yu Qianzhou had actually captured Yan Zhuixing's mother and sister as hostages, and they all heaved a sigh of relief. Yan Zhuixing immediately shouted angrily with his eyes wide open, "Yu Qianzhou, you despicable person. Tell your subordinates to stop and let my people come over. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite to your mother and sister." Yu Qianzhou said word by word. Now that things had come to this, he still wanted to save as many people as possible. Who knew that the moment these words came out, Demon King 3 Knights was very unhappy. How could he always be threatened by others? The 2 dragon binding ropes in his hands suddenly shot out and directly stabbed towards the Allure Beauty and Jasper Flower Fairy below. He also wanted to capture the 2 of them to threaten Yu Qianzhou. Otherwise, he would be at a disadvantage even though he had won a great victory. The dragon binding ropes were as fast as lightning, catching everyone off guard. Fortunately, the Fire Soul Mystic weapon suddenly shot out and grabbed onto the 2 dragon binding ropes. 2 streams of true Samadhi fire quickly burned along the dragon binding ropes. Demon King 3 Knights hurriedly released his grip. His eyes glowed red as demonic aura swirled around his body. He was truly enraged. He pointed down and shouted, "If you dare touch a single strand of hair on the mother and daughter, I guarantee that none of you will live." The white-robed and white-hat eunuch Li also took a step forward. Yu Qianzhou was alarmed. He knew that he could not hesitate any longer. His divine sense enveloped everyone behind him and they disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Such an inconceivable scene stunned everyone. They could not imagine how these people had suddenly disappeared. Eunuch Li teleported below and slowly walked to investigate the situation. Demon King 3 Knights, who had just boasted, was stunned in the air. He never expected that he would slap himself in the face. Suddenly his demonic aura surged into the sky. He raised his arms high and roared, "Kill! Kill them all! Leave no one alive!" In an instant the demonic army began a frenzied massacre. The screams in the surroundings gradually weakened. At this moment, Xianxia could not care less about exposing the secret of Utopia to too many people. He knew what would happen to the remaining people after he escaped with these people. Once everyone landed in Utopia, Xianxia quickly scanned the familiar faces. Suddenly his face turned pale as he exclaimed, "Hong Qi! Gutian! Zhang Ping, they aren't with you?" Chapter 1190. When Zhang Ping heard this, his expression changed and he said in panic, "Senior brother and the others are commanding the army to resist. They are still in the divine ruin realm." Everyone's hearts thumped as they looked at Xianxia. Judging from the situation at that time, it was likely that his disciple had already met with a mishap. Nongzhu, who was quarreling with the Jade Flower Fairy and her daughter, no longer had the intention to settle the score with Xianxia. She looked at him with a serious expression. As for Furong and the other women, they couldn't bear to look at him. They finally understood why Xianxia didn't want them to go out and take risks. The strength of the devil path was beyond their imagination. It was not something they could afford to play with. This time the entire army had been annihilated. The losses were too great. Everyone was even worried that Xianxia wouldn't be able to take this blow. Xianxia closed his eyes and sensed. Hong Qi and Gu Qingyun both had the small silver ball he had given them, so he quickly found their location. Sure enough, they were still in the divine ruin realm. Xianxia's expression twitched. He slowly opened his eyes and looked at the crowd, saying, "Zhang Peng, you are familiar with this place. Arrange for everyone. I will go and save the people from the great flaming mountain and your senior brother." With a wave of his hand he took away the fire soul profound weapon. Xianxia. Hong Tai Long, who had yet to recover from his injuries, shouted. He originally wanted Xianxia to bring him along to help, but unfortunately Xianxia had already left. Everyone was speechless. This incident had given them too much of a shock. Those who were close to Xianxia and knew of Xianxia's temper could not imagine what Xianxia would do. Within the Divine Ruins realm, Xianxia found Hong Qi and Gu Qingyun, but they were two corpses that had been cut in half at the waist. The air was still filled with the thick smell of blood, but the sounds of fierce fighting had already come to a stop. The demonic path army had already pushed through this area, so there was no need to worry about being discovered. The thin fog that was filled with the smell of blood was blown by the wind. The Fire Soul mystic weapon stood quietly behind him to protect him. Xianxia looked at the two broken corpses silently. The two corpses' hands were still tightly clasped together. His gloomy face twitched violently. He suddenly flashed and searched around. After a while he found the lower bodies of the two people and put them together before sending them back to Utopia. After seeing the corpses of Hong Qi and Gu Qingyun, and then looking at Xianxia's murderous gaze, they did not know what to say. They could not even say words of condolence. Xianxia didn't stay for long and left. When he returned, he brought old ancestor Nan Ming Ape King, and the others from Great Flame Mountain with him. Everyone thought that the matter had come to an end for the time being. In order to comfort him, Hong Tai Long also said, "Xianxia, I already know who the Earth Spirit is. So it's the great Demon King Ho Tu under Demon King 3 Knights. The day of our revenge is not far away." Xianxia nodded, looked at Zhang Ping and asked, "I want to know why this happened. How did they know that we were hiding in the Divine Ruins realm?" Zhang Ping hesitated for a moment, then said with some difficulty, "Nothing happened before, but ever since when Rui went out. I'm afraid it has something to do with him." "I understand. It seems that I was too soft-hearted." Xianxia nodded again. Without saying anything else, he turned and walked towards Bai Hua Fairy and Yan Zixia, who were still unconscious on the ground. He grabbed the two of them and disappeared again. Everyone was shocked. What did he mean by taking the mother and daughter away? Could it be that he wanted to find Yan Zhuixing and the others? At the place where Hong Qi and Gu Qingyun died, the mother and daughter who had just woken up looked at the ashen-faced Xianxia in horror. The two of them couldn't move or speak. Xianxia reached his hand behind him. The fire Zhou Xian soldier behind him handed over a large machete condensed from Samadhi true fire. Xianxia took the machete and stabbed it into the ground. He then patted the two of them on the shoulder and slowly pushed them away. He then slowly walked between the mother and daughter to the front and turned around to look at them with an ashen face. Millions of cultivators in the human realm were slaughtered by Zhou Xian and the others. I watched them die without being able to do anything. I overestimated myself and harmed them. The two of you are the most innocent people. It is also I, Xianxia, who has wronged you. Today will be the day that I, Xianxia, will never be able to rest in peace for the rest of my life. Zhou Xian has the protection of a demon god. I may not be able to kill him, but I will make him unable to eat or sleep in peace for the rest of his life. I will make him unable to escape from his nightmares. I will make him cry every day in his dreams. I want to see if he still has the face to become the next demon king of the demon realm. As soon as he finished speaking, Xianxia's hands reached for the collars of the mother and daughter. Under the horrified eyes of the two, he grabbed their collars and tore them apart. Shwa shwa sounds rang out and the torn clothes fluttered in the air. Two curvaceous and alluring naked bodies appeared in the wind that was filled with the smell of blood. Crystal tears rolled down from the eyes of the two. Xianxia turned a blind eye to them. When he brushed past them with a livid expression, he said indifferently, "If there is a next life, I, Xianxia, am willing to do anything for you as an apology." He turned around and pulled out the colorful machete, carrying it on his shoulder. He faced the direction of the base and waited silently. The demonic path's army barged into the underground base and searched everywhere. It was empty, but they did not find a single person. After receiving the report, Demon King 3 Knights muttered, "Where can they hide with so many people?" Zhou Xian cupped his hands and said, "Demon King. Right now Xianxia only has one place to go, and that is the human realm. As long as we find a way to open that passage and with the 3 realms under our control, they will have nowhere to run." "Not good," Uniquely suddenly said in surprise. "Since Xianxia has a way to seal the human realm's passage, then he has a way to seal the divine ruins realm, the Demon King. We can't stay here for long." Demon King 3 Knights was also shocked. He decisively shouted, "Go!" He turned into a stream of light and flew away. Everyone followed closely behind. No one wanted to be sealed again. Not long after they moved, a colorful light suddenly shot into the sky in front of them. Demon King 3 Knights and Uniquely, who were traveling side by side, suddenly stopped. They waved their hands to disperse the mist below. When they looked down, their pupils suddenly shrank. They stared down in horror. Even though the two of them were experienced and knowledgeable, they were still shocked by this scene. Although it was not bloody and was very erotic to them, it was more vicious than anything else. Zhou Xian, who had rushed over, took a look. His eyes widened as he spat out a mouthful of blood. He howled in grief, "Xianxia." Without any bargaining, Xianxia did not say a word. He raised his blade and beheaded the mother and daughter, then disappeared together with the fire soul profound weapon. When the demonic cultivators saw this scene, all of them were dumbfounded. Seeing his mother and sister die in such a humiliating manner in front of everyone, Zhou Xian pointed a trembling finger at the two people who had fallen to the ground. He spat out another mouthful of blood and clenched his chest. With a cry of pain, his vision went black and he fainted on the spot. Demon King 3 Knights pulled him back and hugged him. He shouted to Uniquely, "Quickly go and guard the entrance to the Divine Ruins realm. I'll take care of this." Uniquely flew away without hesitation. In Utopia, everyone saw that Xianxia had returned alone, while Bai Hua Fairy and her daughter were gone. They wanted to say something, but when they saw his ashen face they did not ask. "Zhengping, help me bury your senior brother and the others. I'm tired." Xianxia looked around at everyone and squeezed out a smile that was uglier than crying. He said, "Victory and defeat are common in war. We still have a chance to make a comeback. Everyone has been frightened. Go and rest." After saying that, he flew towards Misty Palace. However, his body seemed abnormally heavy. Not only was his speed extremely slow, his body was even swaying in the air. Those who were close to him were shocked, especially the girls. They couldn't wait to support him and ask him what was wrong. However, 100 Charm Beauty stopped them and said in a low voice, "He's suffered too much. Let him vent it out himself. Otherwise, he'll be depressed and something bad will happen." Everyone felt that she was right, so they slowly followed behind him and flew to Ethereal Palace. Chu Ping'er and the others of Misty Palace also knew that he had returned. They were about to go and welcome him, but as soon as they left the palace, they saw a large group of people flying towards them. Chu Ping'er hadn't seen Yu Qianqiu for many years. She was originally resentful, but when she saw Yu Qianqiu's extremely exhausted appearance, his body on the verge of collapse and his face wearing a guilt-ridden smile, her resentment turned into heartache. She hurriedly went over to support him. "What's wrong?" "I'm fine. I just missed you." Yu Qianqiu buried his head in her ear and whispered, "I feel very sorry for you. It's all my fault. You won't blame me, right?" He wasn't afraid of having too many women around him getting jealous. How could he say such mushy words in front of everyone? Chu Ping'er, whose grievances had turned into tears, was about to complain. Suddenly she sensed a dying aura from Yu Qianqiu. She immediately turned pale with fright and asked, "What's wrong with you?" She didn't get an answer. She looked at the crowd and asked anxiously, "What's wrong with him?" Everyone sighed. Bai Suzhen walked to her side and shook her head, signaling her not to ask anymore. The two of them supported Yu Qianqiu and walked into the palace. "Yu Qianqiu." Suddenly, a woman's sharp and angry voice came from afar. Everyone turned to look and saw three figures rushing over. One was Xiao Wanqing, whose face was full of anger. One of her hands was holding onto the unshaven Qin Feng, who was holding onto a wine pot. The other hand was holding onto her son, who was already a grown man. Her son looked at Yu Qianqiu with a face full of hatred. Another figure flew over. Guan Yu smiled bitterly and stopped the three of them, persuading them to go back. The three of them who had already climbed up the stairs turned around. When Yu Qianqiu saw them, his ashen face squeezed out a smile and said, "What's going on? Xiao Wanqing, who offended your family?" Qin Feng hugged the wine pot and lowered his head in silence. Xiao Wanqing pointed at him and shouted angrily, "It's you. How long do you want to keep our family captive for? Do you want to treat our family as slaves who will sell our lives to you forever?" Yu Qianqiu. Her son also took a step forward and pointed at Yu Qianqiu's nose and shouted angrily, "To think that my father still treats you as a brother. But what do you think we are? I know that you are a vicious and merciless person, but our family is not afraid of death. Make things clear today. Either you let us go or you kill our entire family in front of everyone." Everyone's expression changed. They did not know what was going on. Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a while. Then he looked at his family and sighed, "I don't blame you. It's all my fault. It's all my fault." Before he could finish, his chest suddenly rose and fell rapidly. He spat out a mouthful of blood in front of everyone. His eyes closed and his body fell backward. Chapter 1191. Yu Qianqiu. A wave of exclamations rang out from all directions. Fortunately, Bai Suzhen and Chu Ping'er were supporting Yu Qianqiu, who had collapsed. Everyone instantly surrounded Yu Qianqiu, who had fainted from vomiting blood. In an instant, chaos ensued. Everyone anxiously asked him what was wrong and if he was injured. The unshaven Qin Feng suddenly raised his head, his face filled with sorrow and helplessness. Xiao Wanqing and her son looked at each other in shock. They didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to be so easily scolded to the point of vomiting blood and fainting. Things seemed to have really gotten out of hand. The two of them instantly panicked. They originally thought that by dragging Qin Feng along, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't dare to do anything to them in public. However, if they were to really be struck by lightning, it would be strange for the mother and son not to be afraid. Hong Tailong was also extremely anxious. Yu Qianqiu's mission of punishing on behalf of the heavens had yet to be completed. If something happened to Yu Qianqiu, he really wouldn't be able to report back. In a panic, he squeezed into the group of women and grabbed Yu Qianqiu to quickly examine him. "How are they?" The group of people looked at this expert anxiously. "They aren't injured." Hong Tailong shook his head. However, his expression was somewhat grave as he said, "However, they have nowhere to vent their grief and indignation, so they fell ill from depression. This is even more troublesome. Mental illness is incurable and cultivators are most afraid of this. If they can't walk out from their mental demons and fall into oblivion, they will be no different from the living dead. Zai. How bitter is this mental illness? How did it end up like this?" In the next moment, everyone's gazes turned to the family of three. Many people's eyes were almost spitting fire, as if they wanted to skin the three of them alive. Qin Feng's head slowly pressed down again. Xiao Wanqing and her son couldn't hide the fear in their eyes. At this moment Chu Ping suddenly squeezed out of the crowd. With tears in her eyes she said in grief and indignation, "What are you guys trying to do? I've already promised him that I'll help you talk to him and beg him to let you out. Why don't you give him any face at all?" Xiao Wanqing's imposing manner weakened a little as she said, "How many times have you promised him? It's been so many years and there has been no news from you. Other than saying that he hasn't come back, you're just saying that he hasn't come back. He comes and goes without a trace. How do we know if he really hasn't come back, or if he has come back and you didn't tell us, or if he didn't agree? Now that we know he's back, we naturally have to seek justice from him." Justice? Wei Chuanqiu stared at the three of them with a cold glint in his eyes. He raised his hand and twirled the mouse-like beard at the corner of his mouth and said with a chuckle, "You've stepped into the threshold of cultivation. It's either you die or I die, yet you still want to seek justice? I might as well." He slowly walked over and said, "I might as well give you justice and end all troubles once and for all." His killing intent had been aroused. Guan Yu hurriedly stood between them and cupped his hands in front of his chest. "Everyone, let's talk things out. There's no need to be so hostile. Stop arguing." Bai Suzhen's faint sigh rang out. She separated the crowd and walked out. She looked at the family of three coldly and said, "I've helped Yu Qianqiu make the decision today. Don't you just want to leave? Yu Qianqiu can come and go as he pleases in the human world, the immortal realm and the underworld. You can go anywhere you want. When his body recovers, I'll persuade him to send you away." Some people looked at Bai Suzhen in confusion, while others looked pensive. Those who knew the inside knew that the immortal realm and the underworld were now the rulers of the demonic path. 71 of the 72 worlds in the human world were controlled by the demonic path. It was estimated that the demonic path would not allow cultivators to go to the sealed world. With the cultivation of this family, they wouldn't even be qualified to be a snack for the demonic path. Bai Suzhen hated this family of three to the bone. She wanted them dead. But she didn't want Yu Qianqiu to have any burden in his heart, so she let them decide their own fate. Qin Feng remained silent and did not say anything. The mother and son, on the other hand, whispered to each other and discussed. They first excluded the underworld where the dead lived, but in their understanding, they felt that the immortal world was naturally better than the human world. The peaceful scene of celestial flowers, celestial grasses, and immortals roaming the world of longevity was the dream of many cultivators in the human world. After coming to a conclusion, Xiao Wanqing clenched her teeth and said, "Bai Suzhen, this is what you promised, we didn't force you. Everyone heard it with their own ears. I hope you won't go back on your words. Our family of three wants to go to the immortal realm." As soon as she said this, everyone sighed in their hearts. Now that the three realms were in chaos, killing was everywhere and countless people had died. It was so good to live a peaceful life here, but they just had to go to the immortal realm where the demonic path ruled. Wasn't this courting death? I naturally won't go back on my words. I believe that Yu Qianqiu will still give me this little bit of face. As you wish, after Yu Qianqiu recovers, I'll get him to send you to the immortal realm. After Bai Suzhen finished speaking, she resolutely turned around with a cold expression and got everyone to help carry Yu Qianqiu in. And Xiao Wanqing's family of three left with their tails between their legs. Everyone crowded around Yu Qianqiu and carried him into the room of the Misty Palace. When they placed him on the bed, they discovered that his face was deathly pale, but his cheeks had an intoxicating redness, which was extremely abnormal. It was a sign of his corporeal body's final radiance. Hong Tailong sucked in a breath of cold air and said angrily, "What is this guy trying to do? Is he trying to end his own life? Hurry up and help him circulate his body's functions. This guy is seeking death to end all his troubles." Everyone was taken aback and fought to lend a hand. Hong Tailong immediately roared, "So many of you attacking randomly. Do you want to cripple his physical body? Everyone take turns. He already has the intention to seek death, and is unwilling to circulate his body normally. Anyway, everyone take turns. Don't let his body stop circulating normally." Everyone was submissive, and the few ladies were so anxious that they started crying. In the end, the 100 Charms beauty was the first to benefit from the situation. She supported the unconscious Yu Qianqiu and circulated her energy to circulate his body normally. B*****. Hong Tailong paced back and forth in the room, cursing incessantly. What did this two-faced, vicious and merciless fellow do? Quite a number of people have died. Everyone can understand the sadness in his heart. After all, none of us feel good about it. But with this guy's thick skin, he shouldn't be unable to take the blow of failure, right? If that's really the case, this old dragon really can't imagine how he managed to survive until now. What did this guy do, or what did he encounter? Right at this moment, the room suddenly fell silent. Everyone's gazes were focused on Xianxia. They heard him mumbling, and everyone immediately focused their attention to listen. Unfortunately, the words were too vague and they couldn't hear them clearly. Suddenly, a mumble that sounded like laughter was heard clearly. "Zixia, your butt is so bouncy. Let me have a taste of those 2 lumps on your chest." The room instantly became so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. The group of women who were choking with sobs stopped crying. Everyone looked at each other, thinking that they had heard wrongly. However, from everyone's expressions, they could tell that they hadn't heard wrongly. Finally, everyone looked at Hong Tailong suspiciously, doubting his words. A person who could say such words while unconscious, would he have the intention to seek death? Hong Tailong was even more dumbfounded. Yan Yu, who was sitting on the bed, suddenly smiled through her tears and said, "This dead man really doesn't change his lust. He's already like this, but he's still thinking about those messy things even in his dreams." Suddenly, everyone exclaimed in unison, "Not good." Although Xianxia's face was still smiling lasciviously, tears were flowing out from the corners of his tightly shut eyes. This wasn't considered much, but the tears gradually turned red and in the end blood flowed out directly. It was as if he was weeping for blood. Everyone panicked. They didn't know why he was so sad, but they had clearly heard his obscene words just now, and the lascivious smile on his face was still there. Hong Tailong quickly went over to examine him. After a long time he slowly let out a breath and said, "There's nothing wrong with his body. It's good that you've cried it out. It's good that you've cried it out. It's good that you've vented it out." As he said that, he continued to say to the allure beauty, "Continue to help him maintain the normal circulation of his body. Don't stop. This scoundrel is sick in the head. He might not want to live again later." When everyone heard that it was a good thing, they more or less heaved a sigh of relief. However, they saw him suddenly turn around and ask, "Who is Zixia?" Hibiscus wiped away her tears, bowed and replied, "It's that pair of mother and daughter that he captured just now. They're also Yan Zhuixing's younger sister, Yan Zixia. He met Yan Zixia not long after he stepped into the cultivation world. The two of them seemed to have a relationship when they were on supporting Immortal Island. Later on, for some unknown reason, maybe it was because of Yan Zhuixing, the two of them didn't interact anymore." Hong Tailong made an "oh" sound, looked at Xianxia, nodded slightly and said in a low voice, "I think I understand. This guy might have killed that pair of mother and daughter with his own hands. But if you can injure yourself to this extent, why would you do it?" Everyone was silent. They all thought that Xianxia was heartbroken because he had killed his old lover with his own hands. However, they didn't know how Xianxia killed them, or how he injured others and himself. The hallucinatory Immortal City was destroyed, and Wan Gutong's myriad Saint Mountain was temporarily taken over by Demon Lord 3 Knights as a temporary base. In the main room of Myriad Saint Palace's backyard, Demon Lord 3 Knights stood with his hands behind his back, and Uniquely was by his side. The two of them frowned as they looked at Yan Zhuixing, who was unconscious on the bed. The Clear Sky Great Demon King was sitting by the bed taking care of him. "Mother, is it? Xianxia, I'm going to kill you." Yan Zhuixing repeatedly said these words in his nightmare. The expression on his face was either crying or gritting his teeth. Even though he was extremely excited, he remained unconscious this entire time. Even Demon Monarch 3 Knights and Uniquely were helpless against him. Suddenly Yan Zhuixing's body straightened. The Clear Sky Great Demon King moved as fast as lightning, and a handkerchief appeared by his mouth. Another mouthful of blood sprayed out. The Clear Sky Great Demon King showed the bloodied handkerchief to the two of them, then shook his head helplessly and threw it to the side. "This Xianxia is too ruthless. He kills without leaving a trace." Demon Lord 3 Knights looked at Yan Zhuixing and sighed. No one can accept such a thing happening in front of so many people. AI. As long as Xianxia doesn't die, Yan Zhuixing won't be able to face anyone. What's more, he's the Vice Palace Lord of our Demon Palace, and it happened right under our noses. It's a huge blow to the prestige of us and the entire Demon Dao. It's not a solution for him to continue like this. Eunuch Li's expression was solemn. It's already been 10 days. No matter how high his cultivation is, he can't keep vomiting blood like this. We have to think of a way to resolve his heart demon and wake him up. Chapter 1192. It's not like I don't want him to wake up as soon as possible. Something happens to him, how am I going to answer to Lord Demonic God of the deity realm? Demon Lord 3 Knights let out a long sigh, turned around and slowly walked out. When he reached the empty myriad sacred palace, he suddenly looked at floating cloud and grey dog outside the door and said, "The blue sea essence can cleanse the physical body and mind. It should be able to wake him up. Seems like this is the only way." Eunuch Li, who was following behind him, frowned and said, "Even if we find the blue sea essence, he is still unconscious. He can't resist the corrosion of the blue sea essence on his mind. Can he withstand it? What if he loses his mind? You must know that Lord Demonic God also lost his mind because he couldn't resist it. He lost his mind and killed his wife, unable to differentiate between friend and foe. This was also because Lord Demonic God's mind was strong enough to forcefully reverse the situation. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. I also don't want to take this risk, but we can't just watch and do nothing, right?" Demon Lord 3 Knights turned back to look at him, then looked into the distance and said in a deep voice, "The reason why Lord Demonic God chose him must be because his mind is strong enough to withstand the torture of the 7-star acupoint piercing art. With this strong will, I think he might be able to withstand it. Vice Palace Lord, it's not a solution to continue dragging this out. Since Demon Lord has made his decision, I'll make the arrangements now." After Eunuch Li obtained the decree, he quickly made preparations to head to the Blue Sea Death Trap. In Utopia's Misty Palace, Xianxia had also been unconscious for more than 10 days. A few women took turns to watch over him and they were all a little anxious. At this moment, Xianxia's mind was filled with the ambiguous scenes of him and Xianxia on Fuxian Island. The two of them lived a blissful life in the mulberry garden and lived a world of their own until they grew old. There were no grudges or disturbances. None of the people he knew before or after appeared in his dream. Even Hibiscus, who should have appeared in the mulberry garden, did not exist, let alone Yan Zhuixing. There seemed to be no messy people in his memory. While the two of them were strolling by the seaside, the romantic sea in front of them suddenly became turbulent. In the blink of an eye, the wind and clouds changed abruptly. The entire sea suddenly turned blood red. It had already become a vast sea of blood. Xianxia, who was holding his arm, suddenly turned into an incomparably ferocious blood snake. She tightly coiled around him, trying to drill into his 7 orifices. Xianxia turned pale with fright. He felt that this scene was very familiar. All of a sudden, a boundless golden light rose from the sea of blood. Wherever the golden light shone, the blood snake turned into smoke that wailed mournfully. The endless sea of blood dissipated. The last golden light shone directly on his glabella. Xianxia instantly woke up from his slumber. He recalled the scene where he was struck by Yan Zhuixing's demonic eye. B***starred. Xianxia bellowed angrily. He opened his eyes abruptly and sat up from the bed. As he looked around furiously, he saw many familiar faces looking at him in panic. They seemed to be extremely anxious and afraid. Hong Tailong and the rest, who were helpless outside, suddenly heard Xianxia's loud voice. They immediately returned and swarmed into the room. "What am I doing?" Xianxia was stunned when he saw everyone. He recalled the cause and effect of the matter. Suddenly he raised his hand and slapped his forehead. He smiled bitterly and said, "I had such a long dream. What are you all doing here?" As he said that, he jumped off the bed. Hong Tailong came over with a face full of suspicion. He observed carefully and asked, "Are you really all right? If *ck your crow's beak. What could possibly happen to this daddy?" Xianxia spat. When everyone heard him curse again, they immediately felt relieved. They confirmed that he was really all right. Hong Tailong circled around him and sized him up. He clicked his tongue and said, "Brat, you vomited blood and fainted. You slept for almost half a month. You made us worried to death. Previously you were half dead. Who would have thought that you would be alive and kicking in the blink of an eye? Looks like we were worried for nothing." "I slept for half a month?" Xianxia moved his slightly stiff body and said in astonishment. Seeing everyone staring at him and nodding in agreement, he fell silent and thought about what had happened. After a long while, he smiled bitterly and shook his head with a pensive expression. He said, "I was so angry. I can't bear to look back on it." Everyone had roughly guessed what he had done. They were afraid that he would take things too hard, so they advised him to let bygones be bygones and not take it to heart. Xianxia couldn't help but miss those who had passed away even more as he listened to the assortment of comforting voices and looked at the concerned faces around him. Then he recalled that Xiao Wanqing's family had come to make a scene before he fainted. He hurriedly asked Chu Ping'er how the matter had been handled. Chu Ping'er looked at Bai Suzhen, and Bai Suzhen immediately told her about her reply to their family. Xianxia fell silent for a moment before slowly saying, "Gather all the cultivators in Utopia to the military camp. I'll talk to them." Chu Ping'er immediately made the arrangements. Not long after, all the cultivators in Utopia gathered in the spacious military drill ground. About 90% of the hero army had been lost, and there were only about 1,000 people left. Now there were more women than men in Utopia. The crowd below the stage watched as Xianxia slowly ascended the stage by himself. Standing firmly in the center of the stage, Xianxia scanned the crowd below. His gaze fell on Xiao Wanqing's family of 3 in the front row. It's understandable that some people want to leave Utopia and regain their freedom. I won't force them. A forceful melon won't be sweet and it might even cause a rift. I can send you out, but on account of our past friendship, there are some things I have to make clear, lest it's too late for you to regret it. Xianxia's gaze slowly shifted away from the family of 3. He looked at everyone and continued, "Perhaps everyone doesn't know the situation outside. Now that the 3 realms are in chaos and the demonic path is rampant, countless people have died under the demonic claws. There's something I have to admit. Before I returned, because of my mistake, millions of cultivators in the human world died. You can't imagine how arrogant the demonic flames are. Therefore I advise everyone that Utopia is the safest place. There's no need for everyone to take the risk. Furthermore, I can guarantee that from today onwards, everyone can live freely in Utopia. I will definitely not use anything to interfere with everyone. Of course, if anyone has any trouble, you can look for Ethereal Palace to resolve it. Ethereal Palace will not ignore it. What do you think?" Everyone did not expect their leader to say such a thing. They looked at each other. Xiao Wanqing suddenly took a step forward and said aggressively, "From what you said, could it be that you want to persuade us to stay?" "That's indeed what I mean." Xianxia nodded and said, "I really don't want to see the people in Utopia suffer any more losses. I hope you can understand my painstaking efforts. If you don't believe me, you can ask the heroic team members who survived. They have personally experienced what happened outside." "Xianxia!" Xiao Wanqing's son shouted. He called out Xianxia's name and stood up. He angrily pointed at the few remaining members of the Hero Legion and angrily said, "They are all your people, and they know that you are vicious and merciless. Didn't they say whatever you said and speak up for you? If you don't want to let us out, just say it. Why do you have to beat around the bush? It's beneath your status and you'll become a laughing stock." This fellow had heard and witnessed his mother's curse at Xianxia since he was young. As time passed, he had almost treated Xianxia as an irreconcilable enemy. He had no choice but to win against Xianxia. Otherwise, it would be strange if he did not cut Xianxia into pieces. The moment he said that, Bai Suzhen and the rest wore hostile expressions. Even Hong Tailong and the others who had come to Utopia for the first time could not stand this kid. It was one thing for him to say such words if he had the ability, but he was so stubborn even though he did not have the ability. Wasn't he courting death? Xianxia glared at Qin Feng with a cold light in his eyes. So many people had died and he was still angry. However, when he saw Qin Feng's dispirited expression, he suppressed the anger in his heart and said with a cold smile, "Brat. The number of people I've killed is more than the number of people you've met in your entire life combined. If I want to kill you, I can do it with a flick of my finger. It's even easier than stepping on an ant. Today, on account of your father, I won't hold it against a junior like you." Hearing Xianxia threaten her son, Xiao Wanqing roared hysterically, "Bai Suzhen. You promised to let us go to the celestial world. Why didn't you keep your word?" Hong Tailong and the group of people who had experienced life and death outside shook their heads when they heard this. Bai Suzhen was just about to reply when Xianxia pressed his hand down, indicating that he should handle it. "Qin Feng, I'll only ask you one question." Yu Qianchou stared at Qin Feng and said in a deep voice, "If you say leave, I'll let your family go. If you say stay, I'll let your family stay. You're the head of the family. I can ignore the rude words of this mother and son pair. I only need to see your attitude before making a decision." The unshaven Qin Feng hugged his wine gourd and looked up at Yu Qianchou with a complicated expression. When Xiao Wanqing saw his cowardly expression, her anger flared up. She regretted that she was blinded by greed and agreed to marry this useless thing. Xiao Wanqing turned around and pulled Qin Feng to the front in front of everyone. She said sternly, "You've been a coward your whole life. Do you want us to be cowardly forever? Father, the outside world is so big. There's a place for us to stay. Why do we have to stay here and live our lives under the whims of others?" His son stomped his feet at Qin Feng in exasperation. The mother and son sandwiched Qin Feng in the middle and bombarded his ears left and right. Qin Feng seemed to turn a deaf ear to them and stared straight at Yu Qianchou. Only when Xiao Wanqing nudged him again did he silently nod at Yu Qianchou. "Qin Feng, your family really wants to go to the celestial world? I've said everything that needs to be said. Are you sure you won't regret it? Once I let you go, I won't care about you anymore." Yu Qianchou reminded again. "Yu Qianchou." Xiao Wanqing gritted her teeth and said, "Why do you have to scare an honest man? Do you have any credibility? As long as you don't scheme against us, what do we have to regret? Are you going to let us go or not?" Chapter 1193. Plotting against you? Yu Qianchou sneered in disdain. He couldn't be bothered to argue with this woman. He looked at Qin Feng and shook his head. "Since you've already made up your mind, I have nothing else to say. I'll send you to the celestial world later." After saying that, he looked at everyone and said, "Who else is willing to go to the celestial world? Just say it. I'll send you all away together. Everyone, there's no need to worry. If you want to leave, just say it. I, Yu Qianchou, swear to the heavens that I'll definitely not harm you behind your backs." As soon as he swore, there were a lot of people who were ready to make a move. Xiao Wanqing looked back a few times and saw several women who had a good relationship with her were trembling with fear. Obviously, they also wanted to leave this place. Seeing that someone had taken the lead, over 100 people came out one after another. There were men and women, and they stood in a group below the stage. All of them seemed uneasy. The hero army that had returned from outside naturally remained indifferent. They knew that Yu Qianchou was speaking the truth. It was indeed too dangerous outside. Yu Qianchou looked down and sighed inwardly. It seemed like a forceful melon was not sweet. There were still many people who were dissatisfied with him. After a moment he sighed and said, "Everyone disperse. I won't stop you if you want to leave. Go back and pack your things first. As long as you feel that the things in Utopia are useful to you, you can take them away. I'll give you an hour to pack. I'll wait for you here." After saying that, he closed his eyes. Everyone looked at each other and many revealed looks of joy. It seemed like he was really going to let them leave. Otherwise, there was no need for him to let them pack their things. The crowd immediately dispersed one after another, leaving only Qin Feng on the stage. Hong Tailong and the others looked at each other. No one went to disturb Yu Qianchou, who was on the stage. Qin Feng looked at Yu Qianchou, who was no longer the same as before. He was in a daze as he recalled how he had been abducted when they first met in the 100 Flowers Valley. Back then he had been a little unhappy, but thinking back before he had followed Yu Qianchou, his days outside had been very miserable, and he had relied on a small stall to make a living. In fact, after coming here he had been the most carefree. However, after marrying Xiao Wanqing, he had started to become more and more unhappy. "Boss." Qin Feng suddenly called out to Yu Qianchou, who had his eyes closed and was silent on the stage. Yu Qianchou's eyelids trembled and he slowly opened his eyes to look at him. In the end, he gently landed beside him from the stage and took out the wine gourd that Qin Feng was hugging. With a flash of true samadhi fire in his hand, he instantly turned it into ashes. Then he patted Qin Feng's shoulder and said, "Pull yourself together after you go out. Don't drink anymore. Although the immortal world is dangerous, there's still a way out. If it's possible, I still want to persuade you to stay." "Boss." Qin Feng smiled bitterly. "The mother and son are determined. It's useless to say anything." Yu Qianchou really wanted to scold him for being a good-for-nothing, but he held back in the end. After thinking for a while, he seriously warned, "If you encounter danger in the immortal world, you can say my name and say that you're my people. Even if you end up in the hands of the demonic path, When they hear that you're my people, they'll definitely want to use you as hostages to threaten me. At the very least, they won't harm your lives. Whatever they ask you, just tell them the truth. They won't be able to enter Utopia, so you can suffer less. After that, I'll think of a way to save you." Qin Feng's eyes were red as he looked at Yu Qianqiu. He was so emotional that he couldn't speak. Hong Tailong and the rest sighed and shook their heads when they heard that. They deeply felt that Yu Qianqiu was looking for trouble for them. Guan Yu, who was standing beside Bai Suzhen, also sighed slightly. To be honest, he didn't really believe Yu Qianqiu's words before, but now he believed it. An hour passed very quickly, and the people who wanted to leave came back one after another. This time there were more than 100 people. They were people who wanted to leave but were afraid that Yu Qianqiu would go back on his word. However, when they saw that Yu Qianqiu was really going to let them go, there were more than 200 people in front of them, and most of them were women. Everyone had brought enough things that they could take with them, especially Xiao Wanqing and her son, who were carrying bags of all sizes. Their bodies were also bulging. Qin Feng scanned them with his divine sense and realized that they were filled with bulging storage bags. He did not know how much valuable utopia had they brought with them. He immediately pointed at their bags in shame and said with a red face, You. He was so angry that he could not speak. Xiao Wanqing looked at Yu Qianqiu and snorted coldly. "You've served him for so many years and worked hard without any complaints. Even if you don't make any contributions, you've worked hard. You deserve what you've taken. Do you really think that you can live empty-handed in the immortal world? If you don't prepare more things, what are you going to do in the future? Are you going to continue begging for food when you go to the immortal world? All right. Stop arguing, Qin Feng." "She's right," Yu Qianqiu said indifferently. Qin Feng instantly felt ashamed. He sighed and stomped his feet without saying anything. "Everyone, you'll know when you get to the immortal world." Yu Qianqiu reminded them one last time. He opened his hand and enveloped the 200 people with his divine sense, instantly sending them away. These 200 people had indeed been sent to the immortal world by Yu Qianqiu. They appeared in the valley where Yu Qianqiu had first arrived in the immortal world. Yu Qianqiu hoped that they would have a good omen so that they could start from the beginning and go further. He really didn't have any ill intentions towards them. At the same time, this place was not far from the small town where the Four Links Chamber of Commerce was located. However, they didn't seem to be as lucky as Yu Qianqiu. The moment they appeared in the valley, they heard the sounds of intense fighting coming from afar. Their expressions instantly changed. Everyone rushed to the top of the mountain to take a look. They discovered that the fighting had quickly ended, and most of the small town in front of them had been reduced to ruins. Suddenly, a figure flashed by and fell into the valley. He was covered in blood and panting heavily. It was Four Links Chamber of Commerce's Nan Tianlong. He had lost an arm. Qin Feng gathered his courage and led the way down. He helped Nan Tianlong up and asked, "What is this place?" A group of people also followed. Immortal World's Four Links Chamber of Commerce. Nan Tianlong didn't think too much about why the other party would ask such a question. Instead, he grabbed Qin Feng's arm and begged, "The demonic path massacred my Four Links Chamber of Commerce and captured my junior sister. Who can help me find my son-in-law Wu Xiong in the netherworld and ask for help? My son-in-law will reward you greatly." Everyone jumped in fright. They encountered a massacre from the demonic path as soon as they arrived. It turned out that Yu Qianqiu wasn't trying to scare them. The demonic path was indeed very arrogant in the immortal world. Qin Feng absent-mindedly pushed Nan Tianlong away. He looked at his wife and son, whose faces were pale. He smiled bitterly and said, "Are you satisfied now? Bastards. They actually managed to escape from a small Four Links Chamber of Commerce. Search everywhere. Those who dare to stubbornly resist our demonic path army cannot be left alive." An angry shout that caused everyone's hearts to tremble came from afar. The people in the valley immediately ran for their lives. However, the people who were searching soon arrived in the sky above them. When they saw the people running away, they immediately laughed and called out to their companions, "There are actually so many women. We can't touch that moo bitch, but we can at least touch them." A dozen people quickly rushed over. The cultivation of the people from Utopia was too low. How could they outrun these people from the demonic path? Fortunately, they had more people. There were more than 200 of them. They scattered and fled in panic. These dozen people really couldn't take care of them all at once. However, these people's gazes were all attracted by the big and small bags on Xiao Wanqing and her son. They thought that they contained something valuable. These demonic path people didn't hide their greed. They didn't give in to each other and wanted to take it for themselves. They actually all chased after the family of 3. They quickly caught up to them. Qin Feng overestimated himself and wanted to stop them to buy time for his wife and son. In the end, he was killed on the spot because he resisted. It was unknown why he didn't say the words that Yu Qianzhou told him in time to save his life. Perhaps he didn't have the time, or perhaps he didn't want to say it. The mother and son were quickly caught up and restrained. The dozen people fought over the things in Xiao Wanqing and her son's bags. Some sharp-eyed people discovered that the mother and son's clothes were also stuffed with things. They tore off their clothes on the spot. The man's naked body was still okay, but Xiao Wanqing's appearance was indeed not bad. Her snow-white and plump chest immediately attracted the unscrupulous demonic fanatics' lustful lust. They immediately stripped her naked and took turns to defile her. Because her son's cries of sorrow and blood disturbed others' fun, he was chopped into 2 without any reason. After being abused by the group of demons, Xiao Wanqing, who had fainted, didn't have a way out. After they were done, she was chopped into 8 pieces. In fact, if it wasn't for the mother and son carrying too many things that attracted the attention of the demonic path people, they might have been able to escape like the others. Although they didn't know what their future would be, at least they would be safe for the time being. But then again, they had attracted the attention of the demonic path people, which was equivalent to saving the lives of others. It could be said that they died a worthy death. In the ruined 4 Links Chamber of Commerce, the restrained Mu Tianjiao wanted to cry as she looked at the cold-faced demon who stood with his hands behind his back. She originally wanted to commit suicide so that she wouldn't fall into the hands of the demonic path, but her reaction was too slow and she was restrained on the spot. Little did she know that the person standing in front of her was the domineering Great Demon King under Demon King 3 Nights. His cultivation level was much higher than hers. Once he saw that she had thoughts of committing suicide, he restrained her at lightning speed, causing Mu Tianjiao's plan to fail. You can't die, Dao. You might be of some use when we attack the Netherworld Divine Manor. If you're useless, it won't be too late for you to die then. After saying that, the domineering Great Demon King grabbed her and flew away. In Utopia's military camp, Yu Qianzhou was still standing on the general roll call without saying a word. He didn't know that they had encountered trouble after sending Qin Feng and the others out. After standing silently for a long time, he suddenly gritted his teeth with a gloomy expression. The lives of 1,000,000 cultivators. Even if Wen Rui revealed the secret of the base, it's impossible for Wen Rui to open the sealed Divine Ruin Realm. I still can't figure out how 3 knights and the others entered the Divine Ruin Realm. Chapter 1194. No one present could answer this question. Seeing him walking down with a gloomy expression, he slowly walked out of the military camp alone. Hong Tailong strode after him and consoled him with kind words. There will come a day when everything will be cleared up. Right now, the most important thing is to get rid of San Yi and that filial guy. It won't be much of a problem to deal with the rest of the Devil Path people. You think I don't want to? I want to kill the 2 of them right now. Yu Qianzhou stopped, turned around and asked. But the problem is that we can't defeat them at all. What's worse is that the demon god from the divine realm will interfere from time to time. Can't you think of a way to get some relationship with the divine realm to help? I want to. Hong Tailong smiled bitterly. But even if I invite Coiling Dragon Old Ancestor, we won't be a match for the demon god. Moreover, how would I dare to return to the divine realm now? But in my opinion, the demon god won't dare to interfere with the lower realm. Otherwise, the Tao won't ignore it. We should focus on dealing with the one in front of us. It's useless for us to think too much about the divine realm. By the way, your master seems to be quite capable. He can actually cultivate in the boundary of heavens. Why didn't he ask your master to come out and help? My master is indeed powerful, but it's not like you didn't hear Granny Yan's words. Currently, he can only fight evenly with a great god early stage expert. Think about it, even a great god middle stage fire soul profound weapon isn't a match for that guy. I'm afraid it's useless even if I ask my master to come out now. I don't want him to take that risk. Besides, Yu Qianzhou paused and shook his head. You don't know my master. He has never cared about my matters. I'm afraid it's useless even if I ask him. Then what should we do? Hong Tailong frowned and muttered to himself. It seems that we still have to find a way to capture that earth spirit called Hutu. That's for sure. But we can't guarantee success. So, we have to hurry up and try another thing. Maybe it's a good idea. Yu Qianzhou looked at Bai Suzhen, who was slowly following behind him, and muttered to himself thoughtfully, "Blue sea essence." Beyond the vast continent was a boundless ocean. 2 streams of light streaked across the sky at high speed. Eunuch Li carried Yan Zhuixing on his back as he followed Demon Lord 3 knights in a rapid flight. The 2 of them did not tell anyone that they had come out this time, mainly because they were afraid that someone would find out and take the opportunity to cause trouble. After all, the 2 of them were the key to the demonic path's ability to sweep through the 3 realms. The 2 of them arranged things properly and then quietly left. After flying for an entire day above the boundless sea, the azure sea in front of them suddenly turned into a bright snow blue color. The 2 of them exchanged a glance and knew that they had arrived at the extraterritorial blue sea. The reason why this sea had turned into a snow blue color was because of the legendary meteorite sleeping in the depths of the sea. The sky was high and the sea was wide. Sporadic islands would occasionally pass by below them. This was not the first time the 2 of them had come here. They knew that once they stepped into the extraterritorial blue sea, they would be on the edge of danger. No matter how high their cultivation was, they did not dare to be careless here. So they slowed down their flying speed. A few hours later, the Inferno Mystic Weapon was driving the flying shuttle, carrying Yu Qianzhou, and was also flying over here. Yu Qianzhou had asked Wei Chuanqiu about the approximate location of the Blue Sea Death Realm. Then he came alone with the Inferno Mystic Weapon. Hong Tailong wanted to join in the fun, but Yu Qianzhou considered that he had not recovered from his injuries. Furthermore, it would be a burden if they ran into danger. So he let Hong Tailong recuperate in peace in Utopia. This was the first time Yu Qianzhou had arrived at the immortal world's boundless sea death realm. With the protection of the mid-stage Great God Inferno Mystic Weapon, he was in the mood to look around. The moment he entered the snow blue sea, he slowed down his flying speed after receiving Wei Chuanqiu's reminder. When they encountered sporadic islands, he would occasionally throw a small silver ball down for safety purposes. The 2 people in front and him behind did not know that the other party had come here. When ferocious brown reefs appeared in the sea in front of them, the expressions of the 3 knights Demon Lord and Eunuch Li turned solemn. They flew forward slowly and carefully. This was the famous Blue Sea Death Realm of the 3 realms. Once they entered this realm, they would feel a bone-chilling murderous intent. The blue waves of seawater washed over all sorts of strange-looking jagged rocks. All sorts of strange rocks were filled with crisscrossing holes. It was unknown how they were formed. When the sea breeze blew past, it would produce all sorts of strange sounds that were either sharp or howling. Some of the islands that were submerged in seawater were also filled with holes of various sizes. Seawater flowed in and out of the holes. There was not even a flying seabird in sight. There were no living creatures on the dilapidated islands. It was a scene of death. Xiu Xiu. Suddenly, countless snow-blue rays of light shot out from the ocean, shooting in all directions. Demon Lord 3 knights and Eunuch Li were greatly alarmed. The 2 of them used an unbelievable speed to quickly teleport and dodge, using their astonishing eyesight to quickly find the blind spots of the beams of light, dodging this wave of attacks that came from the bottom of the ocean. However, looking into the distance, one could still see unpredictable snow-blue pillars of light shooting into the sky. 3 knights and Eunuch Li seemed to be very afraid of the pure energy light pillars coming from the bottom of the sea. They carefully flew forward, not daring to touch them. The 2 of them had been here before, so they knew that there was still a distance to the center of the Blue Sea Death Realm. There was an island in the center where they could avoid danger. However, it was not a place that ordinary people could reach. Only those with high cultivation or those who risked their lives to bet their luck would be able to reach it. That was their destination. However, it was this distance that caused the 2 experts to be as alarmed as they were before. Although Yu Qianzhou had heard Wei Chuanqiu mention the dangers of this place, Wei Chuanqiu hadn't been very involved in it back then, so he didn't know much. Yu Qianzhou, who hadn't experienced it deeply, didn't know the true dangers of this place. Even though he had already put away his flying shuttle and had the Fire Soul Profound Weapon carry him, his fearless flying speed was enough to make 3 knights and Eunuch Li speechless. However, this guy's luck was really good. Ever since he had entered the Blue Sea Perilous Realm, he hadn't encountered a single burst of destructive energy from the bottom of the sea. He had been advancing without a hitch, and he had even mistakenly thought that he hadn't reached the most dangerous place yet. As the saying goes, fortune and misfortune come together. Sometimes being too smooth wasn't a good thing. He and 3 knights were separated by several hours, but he boldly moved forward while 3 knights and eunuch Li's speed slowed down. The result was obvious. There seems to be someone up ahead. If that's the case, my judgment is correct. This place isn't dangerous. The dangerous place is still up ahead. Xianxia narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself as he stared ahead. Then he waved his hand and said, "Hurry up and see who it is." The Fire Soul Profound weapon naturally obeyed and chased after them with a whoosh. Demon Monarch 3 knights and eunuch Li's hearing wasn't something an ordinary person could compare to. When they suddenly heard the sound of an expert flying over, they looked back at each other. Their vision was also not something an ordinary person could compare to. Before Xianxia could clearly see the two of them had clearly seen Xianxia and the Fire Soul Profound weapon. When they saw that it was these two fellows who dared to rush here, their faces turned green. They practically shouted at the same time, "Not good." There was no other reason for the two of them to feel that something was wrong. They had already experienced Xianxia's godly methods. Since the other party dared to rush here, it meant that they weren't afraid of the fatal light beams of the Blue Sea Death Realm. At this moment, the intention of chasing them was very clear. He clearly wanted to use the fatal light beams of the Blue Sea Death Realm to kill the two of them. The two of them were truly shocked by Xianxia. Looking around at this desolate death realm, the two of them didn't have the guts to rush here like Xianxia. If they were to encounter the explosion of the fatal light beams at the bottom of the sea, they would die. Thus, the two of them could only remain unchanging. Demon Monarch 3 knights gnashed his teeth in hatred and said, "Bastard, how did he know we were here?" The Fire Soul Profound weapon's flying speed wasn't slow. After the two of them closed the distance, Xianxia's eyes immediately went wide when he saw the appearance of the two people in front of him. The Fire Soul Profound weapon, which was connected to his mind, immediately stopped. At this moment, the two of them were less than 1,000 meters apart. Both of them were staring at each other, clearly caught unprepared. At the same time, both of them could see the clues from the other's expression. It was obvious that they had accidentally bumped into each other. However, what 3 knights and eunuch Li couldn't understand was, why did he dare to rush here? Xianxia's first reaction was whether or not to run. After he calmed down, he realized that eunuch Li was carrying the unconscious Yan Zhuixing on his back. Then he wondered why the two of them brought Yan Zhuixing here. Then he realized that these two experts were just watching him without making a move. Xianxia was even more certain that there was something fishy going on. His eyes turned, and with the thought of escaping if he discovered something was wrong, he actually gathered his courage and approached the two of them step by step. Suddenly, a strange light flashed at the bottom of the sea. Xiao, countless snow-blue light beams shot into the sky. Xianxia finally saw the terrifying light beams that Wei Chunqiu had mentioned. With a thought, the Fire Soul Profound weapon carried him to quickly dodge. 3 knights and eunuch Li were naturally no exception. After several waves of attacks broke out at the bottom of the sea, Xianxia was so scared that he was drenched in sweat. He took some time to take out a piece of extraterrestrial metal essence to experiment. He found that the snow-blue light beams could easily make a hole in the extraterrestrial metal essence like cutting tofu. Now he finally understood how the hole on the crisscrossed reef came to be. He also understood why 3 knights and the others didn't dare to act rashly. It felt like he was holding his head and forcing himself to come here. It was 2F*King scary. 3 knights and eunuch Li could roughly guess why he dared to rush just now. It turned out that he didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Eunuch Li sneered, "Devil Monarch. Should we take this opportunity to kill this thief?" Chapter 1195. That was exactly what Demon Lord 3 Knights was thinking, but just as he had the thought, a few more waves of snow-blue light shot out from the bottom of the sea. After dodging for a while, 3rd Knight glanced at the Fire Soul Mystic Soldier protecting Xianxia. It wasn't a wise move to fight with that monster here. In addition, he knew that Xianxia had the ability to come and go without a trace. He probably wouldn't be able to do anything to him for a while, so why take the risk? This isn't a good place to fight. Let's continue. Ignore him for now. We'll deal with him when we have the chance. Demon Lord 3 Knights called out and continued flying forward with eunuch Li, who was carrying Yan Zhuixing on his back. Xianxia's heart was pounding from the sudden appearance of this deadly thing. He was indeed thinking of retreating, but when he saw the two fellows carrying the unconscious Yan Zhuixing deeper into the death trap, it was truly suspicious. He had already vaguely guessed that they were also here to search for the blue sea gold essence. He didn't want to see a second demon god appear in the three realms, so he immediately gritted his teeth and followed. The two parties continued advancing through the extremely dangerous blue sea death trap, one in front and one behind. After an entire day, the two parties finally entered the central region of the blue sea death trap. In the periphery, the deadly snow-blue light pillars would explode intermittently, but in the central region they would constantly appear. They would randomly shoot out in all directions, alternating with each other. Although it wasn't a collective explosion, it was even more impossible to figure out a pattern. If one wasn't careful, they would collide with one. When an island with a radius of more than 10 kilometers appeared in front of them, Xianxia watched as third knight and uniquely landed on the island. From the lush vegetation on the island, he could tell that the island was a relatively large dead zone in the blue sea death trap. Although there were deadly light pillars crisscrossing above the island was safe. And under the seawater, there was a dazzling snow-blue light, which allowed Xianxia to guess that they had arrived at their destination. However, what made Xianxia speechless was the fact that San Yi and the other man were standing on the island with a sneer on their faces, glaring at him like a tiger watching its prey. Xianxia cursed inwardly. This is bad. I'm afraid that these two guys won't let me safely land on the island. Thus he tried to enter the island from the other side. As he expected, the two of them leisurely wandered across the island and waited for his arrival. After the two of them accompanied Xianxia for a few rounds, Three Knights Demon Lord looked at Xianxia and laughed. Xianxia, I want to see how long you can last outside. What a joke. I can hold on as long as I want. Xianxia was not satisfied with his stubborn mouth, so he teased, if I really can't hold on any longer, and if an accident really happens, I guarantee that you will never know the whereabouts of your son Yi Tiankong. Don't try to fool me with this. Three Knights Demon Lord sneered, if Konger could cultivate, I might be able to be fooled by you. Unfortunately, he was born without the ability to cultivate. Even with miraculous medicine, he won't be able to live past 200 years. You're just a little thief who's still wet behind his ears. I don't know where you've heard of my son's name, but you're acting all mysterious. It's a pity that you only know the surface but don't know the inside story. You're like a jumping clown showing off in front of this lord. Do I look like a jumping clown? Xianxia looked at himself, then clicked his tongue and said, what bullshit, Demon Lord, you're just a frog at the bottom of a well. This lord is in a good mood today, so I'll let you broaden your horizons. He revealed a teasing expression and sighed. The God Realm's dragon race has a great technique called the Divine Dragon Empowerment Technique. Even the common peddlers of the mortal world can be imbued with cultivation. I wonder if you, the so-called Demon Lord Three Knights, have heard of it? The moment he said this, the expressions of Demon Lord Three Knights and uniquely changed at the same time. The former suddenly shouted, Xianxia, is what you're saying true? Ever since Three Knights heard uniquely mention that Xianxia mentioned Yi Tiankong after the illusory immortal city was destroyed, he had kept this matter in his heart. He felt that Xianxia wouldn't mention his son for no reason. There had to be a reason, but he hadn't found a suitable opportunity to chat with Xianxia. Now was a good opportunity, so he naturally wanted to test the truth. He didn't expect to hear the Divine Dragon Empowerment Technique. His heartbeat immediately sped up. What did I say? I didn't say anything. Xianxia revealed a very surprised expression, then looked at himself up and down and said with a wronged expression, I'm just a jumping clown. I'm just showing off blindly. As for whether people believe me or not, it's none of my business. Anyway, Yi Tiankong isn't my son, hee. Demon Lord Three Knights wanted nothing more than to slap him into a pulp. Ever since he ascended to the throne of Demon Lord, this was the first time someone dared to tease him in front of his face. He resisted the urge to kill and said in a low voice, you mean to say that Yi Tiankong received the Divine Dragon Empowerment Technique and has a cultivation base, so he's still alive? Xianxia immediately cackled and said, as for whether your son is still alive or not, I don't know. I only know that there's a guy who can't cultivate but likes to swindle people. He comes from the demon realm and his name is Yi Tiankong. He tricked a divine dragon into using the Divine Dragon Empowerment Technique and gave him an early small god cultivation base. This is impressive. The expressions of the two people on the island changed again. They knew better than anyone what kind of person Yi Tiankong was. He indeed liked to play tricks and swindle people. Yu Qianzhou had already made it so obvious. Even if he deliberately refused to admit it, how could the two not know that he was talking about Yi Tiankong, who had mysteriously disappeared in the demon realm? Yi Tiankong had an early small god cultivation base, so he naturally wouldn't die unless something unexpected happened. Demon Lord Three Knights' calm face twitched and he said through gritted teeth, "Don't beat around the bush. Yi Tiankong is still alive. Where is he?" "I forgot." Yu Qianzhou, who had just dodged a wave of fatal light beams, said angrily, "Damn it. You're standing on the island leisurely while I'm risking my life here. How can I have the mood to chat with you? I forgot. You're my enemy, there's nothing to talk about with you. I'll just go back." The Flame Soul Profound weapon really did take him back. Demon Lord Three Knights immediately lost his temper. With a pained expression he said sternly, "Stop. I'll let you go to the island." "Damn it. The island isn't yours. It's not up to you to decide. If I want to go, I'll go." Yu Qianzhou's mouth was stubborn, but the Flame Soul Profound weapon still took him away. He wanted to take the opportunity to plant a silver ball on the island as a teleportation coordinate. In the future he could do it anytime and anywhere. If he planted it nearby, he was afraid that one day he would accidentally teleport out and be shot into a bloody hole by the fatal light beam. However, as soon as he turned around, his eyes immediately froze. He stared straight at the island. On the tallest tree in the center of the island there was a person standing there. Demon Monarch Three Knights and Eunuchly quickly turned their heads to look up and were also shocked. They saw a slender man in white standing quietly on the treetop looking at them. His snow-blue waist-length hair fluttered in the wind. His snow-blue eyebrows flew steeply to his temples. His eyes were also emitting a snow-blue cold light. On his cold cheeks, his lips were slightly snow-blue, and there was a light blue cloud pattern in the center of his forehead. His expression was cold and incomparably lonely as he stood there silently, like a demon or a god. Even Demon Lord Three Knights and Eunuchly did not notice any movement when he appeared on the island. The two looked carefully and found that they could not see the depth of his cultivation. The shock in their hearts was indescribable. They did not know when such an expert appeared in the three realms. It was not strange that the two did not recognize this person, but Yu Qianzhou was all too familiar with this person. It was actually Wen Lanfeng, who had been missing for many years. To be precise, Yu Qianzhou also suspected that this person was Wen Lanfeng. They indeed looked exactly the same, but that lonely temperament between heaven and earth was not something that Wen Lanfeng possessed. What made Yu Qianzhou most suspicious was the snow-blue long hair and the abnormality between his brows. It made him not completely certain that this person was Wen Lanfeng, who had been missing for many years. "Who are you?" Demon Lord Three Knights asked solemnly. He sensed an extremely dangerous aura from this person, and so did Eunuchly. The two were on unprecedented high alert. "Who am I?" The person's snow-blue eyes revealed a trace of doubt, but his magnetic voice sounded like cold metal. "I hate it when people ask me such questions. It makes me very uncomfortable, so I'm going to kill you." The person's body suddenly burst forth with a suffocating murderous aura filling the world. He suddenly waved a finger and a startling snow-blue sword shadow burst forth from his fingertip, causing the world to change color. It directly slashed towards Demon Lord Three Knights and Eunuchly like a thunderbolt. The two were shocked, and knowing that they were no match for this person, they quickly dodged. Without saying a word, they braved the great danger and quickly rushed to the surface to escape. The person's fingertip gently hooked, and the incomparably powerful startling sword shadow was unexpectedly withdrawn, suddenly disappearing without a trace. Two fingers simultaneously bent and flicked, and two slender snow-blue sword lights chased after them at an unbelievable speed. "Sky-breaking blood!" Demon Lord Three Knights shouted, and the scarlet cloak on his shoulder suddenly fell off and expanded, instantly turning into an incomparably magnificent wall of blood light, cutting across the sea. Boom! Blue light and blood-red light shone everywhere, and countless fine red cloths fluttered in the air, perishing together with the two slender sword lights. Demon Lord Three Knights and Eunuchly instantly disappeared into the distance. Their luck was not bad, and they actually did not encounter the fatal light pillar erupting from the bottom of the sea. Yu Qianzhou was shocked. He didn't expect this person to be so powerful. With a flick of his finger, he was able to make Demon King Three Knight and Eunuchly flee in panic. They didn't even have the courage to fight him. Just how terrifying was his cultivation. However, what shocked Xianxia was yet to come. He wanted nothing more than for this person to chase after Demon Lord 3 knights and uniquely and kill them, but who knew that this person would play the game of not chasing after a cornered enemy, or perhaps he did not even bother to chase after them. His shining snow-blue eyes coldly stared at Xianxia. Xianxia was so frightened that he trembled. Wenlan Feng. What do you want? Chapter 1196. The other person's terrifying and ruthless eyes were colder than cold-blooded animals. Anyone who was glanced at would feel panic. The eyes didn't seem to know him at all. Xianxia was now quite doubtful whether this person was Wenlan Feng. Not only was his appearance more strange, but his cultivation was also different from Wenlan Feng's. But if it really was Wenlan Feng, why did it seem as if he didn't recognize him? Could it be that he was suppressed by me in the past and now wants to take revenge? Xianxia was prepared to leave as soon as he noticed that something was wrong. Wenlan Feng. There was a trace of doubt in the man's cold eyes. He looked at Xianxia and asked, "Who am I? Do you know me? Why do you also call me Wenlan Feng?" Xianxia was stunned. He didn't understand what the other person meant. While he was stunned, the fire soul mysterious weapon dragged him to avoid the fatal light at the bottom of the sea. After stopping, the more Xianxia thought about the other person's words, the more he felt something was wrong. The other person didn't know who he was? It's not convenient for me to talk here. Can you let me go to the island and talk slowly? Xianxia tried to ask. Seeing that the other person didn't object, he let the fire soul mysterious weapon take him to the island. That person looked at him with a longing gaze, filled with the desire to know. Xianxia looked at him and carefully sized him up again and again, scratching his chin. He couldn't figure out if this person really didn't know who he was or if he was just pretending. On second thought, with the other person's cultivation, if he wanted to deal with him, he didn't need to beat around the bush. So he boldly flew over slowly and carefully stood on the same tree with the man. After carefully identifying him face to face again, he found that it was indeed Wenlan Feng. Listening to what you just said, did someone also call you Wenlan Feng? Xianxia asked with some curiosity. The man waved to the valley on the side of the mountain and said, "He said I was Wenlan Feng and I killed him. He said I had been possessed by the devil and said I was the sword demon. What does it mean to be possessed by the devil? Am I Wenlan Feng or sword devil?" Xianxia was stunned again. He realized that his brain couldn't keep up with the other party's train of thought when talking to such a person. He looked in the direction of the other party's finger and only saw a small rocky valley. Perhaps it was more appropriate to describe it as a rocky valley, but he didn't see anyone else. He can still speak after being killed by you? What the hell is this? Xianxia scratched his head awkwardly and smiled. Can I see who you're talking about? As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared without a trace. He was already standing in the valley, nodding at him as if he was asking him to go over. Xianxia nodded and flew over with the fire soul profound weapon. Looking at the direction of his finger, he saw a shallow cave on the stone mountain wall. At a glance, he could see the bottom of the cave. There was a body that had been dried into a human body sitting cross-legged with its head down. Although Xianxia didn't see the person's face clearly, he was shocked when he saw that there was only one arm. He quickly flashed into the cave. He walked to the corpse and squatted down with a dignified expression. There was a big penetrating wound in the abdomen of the dried corpse. He bent down to look at the face of the corpse. Although the face was dried, he could vaguely recognize who it was. As he expected, it was Li Duxing, who had left for a long time. Xianxia stood up silently and slowly turned to walk out of the cave. Looking at Wenlan Feng standing on the rock in front of him, he sighed softly. Now he could confirm that the terrifying master in front of him was Wenlan Feng, and he had roughly guessed something. From Wenlan Feng's words, he could tell that Li Duxing was killed by Wenlan Feng. The reason why Li Duxing was killed by Wenlan Feng was that Wenlan Feng had lost his memory due to Qigong deviation, which was the sword devil that Li Duxing mentioned before his death. As a result, Wenlan Feng, who had lost his memory, was confused about whether his name was Wenlan Feng or Sword Devil. Xianxia didn't expect that the two people who had left would have such a thing. One was killed by the other, and the other lost his memory due to Qigong deviation and became a terrifying master. Xianxia had no idea what had happened between the two of them for them to end up here. He wanted to ask Wenlan Feng the reason, But he knew that given Wen Lanfeng's current state he would not be able to get any answers. Am I Wen Lanfeng or Sword Devil? Wen Lanfeng's snow-blue hair fluttered in the wind as he stood motionlessly on the rock. He seemed to want to know who he was. Yu Qianzhou looked back at Li Duxing, who had been dead for a long time in the cave. When he looked at Wen Lanfeng again, he didn't have the slightest fear. At this time, no matter how high Wen Lanfeng's cultivation was, he was just a poor man who lost his memory in Yu Qianzhou's eyes. He smiled faintly and said, "Your name is Wen Lanfeng. Sword Devil is your nickname." The light blue cloud pattern between Wen Lanfeng's eyebrows loosened, and he showed a look of sudden realization. He nodded and said, "So my name is Wen Lanfeng and Sword Devil is my nickname." Damn it! Such a master became a fool. Yu Qianzhou felt that it was not worth it, but his eyes gradually brightened. Wasn't this the trump card to deal with San Yi and the others? He flashed to the front of Wen Lanfeng and said seriously, "I'm your friend Yu Qianzhou, do you remember me?" Yu Qianzhou? Wen Lanfeng's blue eyes were no longer cold but full of blankness. He shook his head and said, "I don't know you." Yu Qianzhou was embarrassed and waved his hand, "It doesn't matter. I'll take you home. When you go back you will remember me." He was determined to take Wen Lanfeng back to deal with San Yi and the others. Home. Wen Lanfeng's eyes were still blank. He looked around and said, "This is my home. I am very familiar with it. You don't need to take me home." Yu Qianzhou was speechless. Although Wen Lanfeng was an idiot, it was really difficult to fool him. After a while he coughed solemnly and said, "Wen Lanfeng, have you even forgotten Lu Yanqing?" Wen Lanfeng was immediately stunned by these words. His eyes flashed with an extremely chaotic look and he suddenly murmured, "Lu Yanqing. Lu Yanqing." Sure enough, he was still the idiot. He didn't remember anyone, but he still remembered that Lu Yanqing. Yu Qianzhou saw that it was useful to bring out Lu Yanqing. He was secretly happy and continued to provoke, "Yes. It's Lu Yanqing. Have you forgotten her? The place with Lu Yanqing is your real home." "My real home. Lu Yanqing." Wen Lanfeng was still muttering to herself, but what made Yu Qianzhou stunned was that Wen Lanfeng had actually cried silently. Drops of crystal clear light blue tears gently slid down from her eyes, quietly slipping down. Yu Qianzhou suddenly felt a little embarrassed to continue to provoke him. Wen Lanfeng noticed that he was crying. He raised his hand and stretched out 2 fingers to catch a drop of light blue tears. Under the refraction of the sun, the tears shone with a magnificent blue light. He asked, "What is this? Why are my eyes watering uncontrollably?" Yu Qianzhou was speechless. Wen Lanfeng continued to ask, "Why does my calm heart suddenly have a very sad feeling? Why does the name Lu Yanqing make me feel so warm? Why does this name make my heart unable to calm down again? I seem to be very familiar with this person, don't I?" As he spoke, the light blue tears in his eyes continued to fall quietly. Yu Qianzhou nodded and stared at him with a wry smile. "Do you want to see her?" "Lu Yanqing, my real home." Wen Lanfeng suddenly nodded vigorously and said, "I want to see her very much. Please take me to see her. I want to go back to my real home." "Hey. Then let's go home. Let's go home." Yu Qianzhou smiled helplessly and casually scattered a few small silver balls into the valley. Then the two disappeared together. The two who fled to the periphery of the Blue Sea death trap saw that the terrifying expert did not chase after them. They looked at each other and immediately stopped. Demon Lord 3 Knights frowned and said, "When did the 3 realms have such a powerful expert?" Eunuch Li calmed his lingering fear. After thinking for a long time, he said in a low voice, "He is indeed very powerful. If this subordinate guessed correctly, for such a powerful expert to appear in this place, he must have been tempered by the Blue Sea essence. Even his eyes and hair have turned blue. This is clearly a sign of borrowing too much Blue Sea essence. I remember that when Lord Demon God lost his mind, his eyes were blue for a period of time, but it was not as deep as this one. I thought so too, but if it really is a sign of using too much Blue Sea essence, it is clearly to the extent that it has penetrated into the bone marrow. I have endured the pain of the Blue Sea essence tempering my body. I cannot imagine that a human's will can withstand the corrosion of such a huge amount of energy without being refined. If that is the case, he would have long become one with the Blue Sea essence. How could he still be alive?" Demon Lord 3 Knights said in shock. Eunuch Li nodded in agreement, then shook his head in denial. Demon Lord, do you still remember his answer when you asked him? You asked him who he was, and he said that this question made him very uncomfortable. I felt that from his tone, it seemed like he did not know who he was, as if he had already gone mad and lost his mind, becoming a real demon. A demon who had gone mad was a completely different concept from those who followed the demonic path. The former was more accurately described as sick, while the latter cultivated demonic arts and did not share the same path as others. Gone mad? Demon Lord Three Knights thought for a moment, then sucked in a breath of cold air. That seems to be the case, but I really cannot imagine that someone could use too much blue sea essence and still survive. Just how strong of a will would that require? I'm afraid that even Lord Demon God could not withstand such a huge amount of blue sea essence, right? Heavens! Just what kind of faith would allow a person to persevere like this? It's simply inconceivable.